Great. Thank you. All right, we will call the meeting to order. Aaron, would you like to call the roll?
Student trustee Quinlan.
Here.
Trustee James. Trustee Morton.
Here.
Trustee Schaefer.
Present.
Trustee Alm.
Here.
Trustee Griffin.
Here. Lisa did reach out to me and let me know that she has a personal issue and has to be in the Bay Area today, so that's why she's absent. Bit of an emergency. Okay. Everything all right? Okay. No worries. Hopefully. We do not have anything to report out of closed session. And approval of the agenda.
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
Second?
Do we have a change we need to make to the agenda?
We need to strike items.
Is that what Jason forgot, maybe?
No, I forgot something else.
Oh.
Yeah, we need to take
6.2, no, hold on.
6.14. We don't have 6.14.
And we do not have the 6.2 minutes from 6.6.
Okay, so on 6.2.1, approving board minutes, it should not include 6.6.24. My voice sounds terrible, boy.
I'm trying to mute it, but it won't mute. So.
And then on 6.14, the approval of MTA tentative agreement 2023-24-02 TA adjunct duties, we're not including that either. So those are two items on the consent agenda that would not be included. Okay, but right now we're talking about just approval of the agenda as a whole, item 4.3.
So, but we consider that as part of
The consent agenda, yeah.
I'll
Okay.
amend my motion to recognize those two alterations in the consent agenda.
Second?
All right.
Student
Go-
trustee Quinlan.
Yes.
Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer.
Yes.
Trustee Alm.
Yes.
Trustee Griffin.
Yes. All right. We have a public hearing on a couple of different items. One of them, item 5, we'll do the first one first. Item 5.1 is a public hearing regarding the Education Protection Account funding plan. The district is required to create an EPAFP to determine how the monies received from the Educational Protection Account will be spent. And this
Recording in progress.
So this public hearing is for public input before the plan is adopted, which will be in a resolution later in the agenda. So I'm opening the public hearing on the EPAFP. Do we have any members of the public or anyone else who would like to speak to this item on the public hearing?
I see no one.
Hearing and seeing no one, we will close that public hearing. Item 5.2 is a public hearing regarding the formation of the Mendocino Unified School District Maintenance Assessment District, ordering the improvements as described and confirming the diagram and assessment. It's the levy of the assessment for fiscal year 2024-25. So again, this is an item that will be appearing later on the agenda that the board will be considering, and we are requesting public input before it's adopted. So this is opening of the public hearing on the Maintenance Assessment District levy. Do we have any public comment?
I see none.
All right, seeing none, we will close that public hearing. Item 6 is the consent agenda. Sounds like with the amendments we previously discussed, which is the removal of the board meeting minutes for June 6th from 6.2.1, as well as the removal of item 6.14. The consent agenda is otherwise, I think, intact. Would anyone like to move to approve it with those two changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda?
I just wanted to call out and pay attention to the
Sure.
fact that we're recognizing over $133,000 of scholarships for our graduates this year. It's a remarkable number of talented students.
Agreed.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, I got to attend scholarship night. It was really great. And it was really neat seeing the members of the community who raised these monies for the students coming up and presenting to them. It's a nice event. All right, any public comment on the consent agenda before we vote?
Student trustee Finsland,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Schaefer,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes.
trustee Griffin.
Yes. All right. Item 7 is the Mendocino High School solar project. So this has been on the agenda the last 2 meetings and is on once again because we wanted to get a little bit more information from our solar consultant before making a determination. Is Tom on?
Yep.
Great.
I am indeed.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Just fine.
Great. I know we emailed a little bit and you had a sense for some of our concerns arising out of our last meeting.
Sure.
Are you prepared to address some of those for us?
I certainly hope so. I'll do my best.
I think the biggest question and concern was around how we get to the numbers on the financial analysis as far as how do we determine what the time it will take to pay back or, to essentially break even and pay back the investment, and then also sort of what the return on the investment is over time, and understanding the assumptions that go into that analysis and how it works so we can better consider that.
Sure. So, and conceptually, it's pretty straightforward, which is, you've got all of your costs to both develop the project, and then you've got costs to maintain it. And then the project's offsetting energy from PG&E. And so it's offsetting cost of energy to otherwise buy from PG&E. And then in addition to that, you've got some incentives. Primarily, you've got the Inflation Reduction Act investment tax credits, which we've assumed are 30% here. So that's conceptually, the high level picture, how this works. We're just saying you're buying something, you're paying money to maintain it, and it's offsetting your costs from PG&E. And does that actually work out for you financially? So the details of that turn out to be, there's a lot of them. So this is a cash purchase financing, and our cash purchase finance model has over 80 input variables. And we use input variables. Each one of those input variables actually has a expected, optimistic, and conservative value, which is based on 2 orders of magnitude from the expected value. So optimistic and conservative. So it's basically a P90 kind of thing. And we run through a financial model. So there's a lot of stuff that's considered into it. So for instance, you've got the solar PV system, those things degrade over time. So we're taking into account the degradation of the PV system over time. We're taking into account that the utility tariffs are going to change. And in this case, utility costs have gone up in PG&E. They've gone up. If you look at the last roughly 55 years, they've gone up a little over 3% a year on average. A lot of that has actually been in the last decade too. They're a little bit under 3% a year if you look at everything before like 2012, back into the 1950s. But in the last decade, there's been a really steep escalation of utility rates. We don't think that's sustainable. And you see things like at the legislature, there's a lot of talk about how do we get utility costs under control for consumers, especially lower income consumers. And there's been workshops at the CPUC and presentations about how to move some costs out of the utility bills and into, state taxation, things like that. I don't want to get too far down the road, but we're taking into account changes of the tariff too over time. So one of the things that's happening in this particular instance is that your systems are going to be grandfathered on NEM2, which is net energy metering. It's the second version of that. So that's a tariff structure, and it'll be grandfathered for 20 years. And at the end of 20 years, you're going to be then off of that grandfathering, and you're going to be moved on to whatever sort of tariff structure is available at that time. And so we make estimates about what the value of energy is 20 years from now for that. There's a whole bunch of other things. So if you own a system, it's, these things, they don't really have much moving parts, and they generally work pretty well, but they don't work well unless you maintain them. So we've assumed that you're going to have a contract to maintain this thing, and you're going to pay money every year to make sure that that maintenance is done. And there will be performance guarantees associated with that contract to make sure the contractor, if it doesn't work, they pay up the difference. You've got insurance costs associated with it. You have some overhead for your staff just to keep track of the thing. Let's see, we've got decommissioning costs. Like most of the analysis you see don't actually talk about decommissioning costs. So we've got decommissioning costs in there, and we build up a reserve over time. We suggest that you set aside a reserve, and every year from the savings, the PG&E savings that you receive from the system, you set aside some of that money so that 25 years down the road, you can decommission this system. And there's legislation right now that's being worked in this California state legislature, for instance, that says, hey, if you put in a PV panel, whoever buys that PV panel must contribute anywhere from $10 to like $50 a panel for decommissioning costs down the road. We've included that in there. Last big thing that we include in it is that the solar panels are basically, they last 25 to 35 years. We recommend and basically insist that you get tier 1 panels that are from tier 1 companies and that have manufacturer warranties that the manufacturer will be around to stand behind, and they're really good panels. These are the panels that the financing people out there are willing to finance. So those last about 25 to 35 years, but the inverters do not. And so they last about 12 years typically in these conditions. And so we've got inverter replacement costs in there as well at year 12. And again, we suggest you actually build up a reserve so that you're putting money aside so you don't get a big outlay in year 12 or whenever those inverters need to be changed. So all of that is put together, and and there's a bunch more. I'd be happy to show you a snippet of our financial model. It's got many, many, many columns in it. And that's, you add all those numbers up, and what you get is a cash flow. And that cash flow shows that in the year 1, you're pretty far underwater because you just spent over $1 million on this thing. In year 2, you get back the ITC. So in this case, we're assuming 30%. So that comes back as a direct payment from the IRS to you. So that just offsets 30% of the project costs right there. And the project costs that are offset are also your soft costs. So for instance, legal, if you hire us to help you do this project, our costs are there. Interconnection costs are also eligible as well. So taking all that stuff into account, and then you're just offsetting the cost of energy from PG&E and how these tariffs change over time. And the model says that, you're going to basically break even on a nominal dollar basis somewhere around 8 years. And so that's where it goes. Again, I'm happy to show you a snippet of the model if you want to see what that looks like. You guys just let me know.
Let me ask you this. You included in the presentation from 2021 has various assumptions, and then you provided us with sort of updated numbers for this type of system we're looking at doing now between 173 and 219 kilowatts. You gave us those two scenarios. Are all those other assumptions from the 2021 document still the same in the
Many
updated numbers
of
you
them
gave us?
are. So yeah, we tried to keep the ones pretty much the same. There are two significant changes, and those two things are the investment tax credit, that 30% tax credit that you guys can directly get to now. That wasn't available back then. And also PG&E's energy costs have continued to go up really steeply. And so the base where we're looking at, what the cost of your PG&E energy is higher than where we were looking then. So both of those things actually have a significantly positive effect on the economic performance of this system.
Yeah, I noticed in the 2021 presentation, the average cost of electricity was 26 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And we're paying 42 cents already right now, right, in early 2024.
Yeah, and yes, and we looked at, when we did this, we're at roughly 38 cents, somewhere in there. Our modeling based on the actual tariffs and the energy usage profile that we think you're going to get to once you do phase two. So there's another assumption in there, is that we're assuming that you've got phase one done, you get phase two done, and you're moving, things from basically diesel boilers onto electricity, as well as using some, I believe you're going to be using some heat pumps as well. Both of those things crank up the amount of electricity you'll be using. And I should add one other thing too. So one of the other pieces that we didn't change about this is that when you're doing these changes that you have, you're moving away from diesel boilers to electricity. When you do that, the cost of the fuel, diesel, goes away, as well as the cost of replacing those boilers. So diesel boilers, they last about 20 years. In our analysis, our original analysis, we looked at the various different boilers that you had in place and had replacement costs in there basically at year 20 for those assets as well, that you don't have to do. So those are also savings compared to what you would be spending if you had diesel in place.
I'm pausing now in case other people on the board have questions.
Well, with all respect, I find those numbers optimistic. My back of the envelope thing, just looking at how much solar energy we're planning to do with a 200 kilowatt system, stretches out that time, considerably longer than 8 years. I think, especially when you're adding in those costs, which I hadn't calculated, like the replacement investment and everything else, it's closer to 12 to even longer, 12 years. And I guess, the other thing is, in terms of our particular site, how reliable is the projection of how much energy will actually produce with those panels in our, right by the ocean situation. We put a $1 million solar project on our K-8 school that has not, performed up to the standards that we thought it was going to.
Would you like me to address any of that?
Sure.
Sure.
I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just asking, that's my concern.
Yeah, and those are really valid concerns. So to start with the short time frame for paying it back. I would agree with you. What we were seeing prior to these two changes, right, before you got 30% of the cost back from the federal government, that makes a big difference, right? So that reduces the amount of time that you're going to take to pay it off by 30%. right there. And also just the high cost of PG&E's energy, that has reduced the amount of time to pay it off too, because the energy costs that you're offsetting are quite a bit higher. So those two things, what we were seeing for this kind of system in the past, prior to those changes, was a 12 to 14 year, exactly what you're saying, like a 12 to 14 year simple payback. And right now, given the assumptions that we have in the model, it just works out to you're around 8 years. I don't know what to tell you other than we try to use fairly conservative assumptions. One of the other things we did is that the cost of solar PV has actually gone up significantly since we did the original analysis. And so we have pushed up that cost quite a bit as well. So yeah, so this is like the most recent piece of like really high level information, just as a to show you what it looks like. The ground mount only, that's considerably less expensive, and we see a 6.7 year nominal payback. Again, I can open up a model and show you what our Monte Carlo analysis says about this. It actually gives us a range of things, a range of years, but that's what's called the P50 number. That's in the middle of that distribution curve. So that's where we expect it to be, around 7.7. Will it be exactly 7.7 years? The probability of that is like nearly zero. It might be 7.8, or it might be 6, or it might, there are a number of variables here. This is where the center of the probability distribution turns out. That's what these numbers are. Let's see, a P90 number on that. Let me just take a look at the model really quickly here.
And while you're doing that, Tom, one of the things I was interested in is how much electricity we're actually currently using and how much we originally predicted we would be using, and how much electricity these different sizes would produce. Our original assumptions were that we would be producing about 304,000 kilowatt hours a year of energy. And that's what's included in the 2021 presentation. The 217.2 kilowatts size array would produce 296,000 kilowatt hours in the first year. And that's based on the solar PV yield. And this goes to one of your other questions, is how good is it going to be out here on the coast? Tom, I assume that solar PV yield number, the 1,363 kilowatt hours per kilowatt per year, I mean, I've seen numbers much bigger than that. So that's accounting for the fog and weather conditions here on the coast?
That's exactly what that is. If you were more inland, you'd probably see around 1,500. So significantly more than that. So that is accounting for the fog. And there's a couple of different ways that's done. We use a tool called helioscope, and you can we use both terrestrial and satellite estimates of the insolation. And so that's why that's much lower, because there's more fog out there and it does impact the amount of production you get. So we've seen that be, it's kind of the gold standard of the industry. There's another tool that is gold standard, which is called PVSYST. And these two tools actually just virtually align perfectly for this kind of stuff. They both set up the modeling and the inputs so that, I mean, this is the industry gold standard for doing this kind of modeling. Again, we've got climate change. Will it result in more fog or less fog? I used to live in Bolinas, and I think that we had seen a trend of less fog out there over time. I don't know if that's the case up in Mendocino. if you end up getting less fog, you could get more insulation, you could get more production and more energy. So it looks like I am. It looks like the worst case that we're seeing here is going to be somewhere around 9 to 10 years, somewhere in that range, is for the payback. And that's what's called a P90 number. So that means that there's a 90% chance that you get to that. With the 7.7 year, that's what's called a P50 number. So there's a 50% chance that it's better than that it's less years, or a 50% chance that it's more. Right. Right. And so, it's a distribution curve, and it's a distribution curve based, it's basically on foreseeable issues within these things. There are black swan events that can happen. There could be a volcano that goes off and, causes 2 years of significant insulation loss. We're not accounting for that kind of stuff. We're just looking at the historical averages here.
That piqued my interest in your presentation was after 20 years, we no longer get any break from the PG&E tariff. So in 20 years, we basically are just any month we have a surplus of electricity, we lose that extra electricity we create?
No, so the current tariff, it's called the net billing tariff. And what they did, and we believe that this is probably something that will last for a while. The CPUC doesn't really want to go in and revisit that whole scenario. So they started in 2014, basically revisiting the net energy metering tariff that's been in place in California since 1995. So they spent 10 years really working through that. It was a difficult process for them and a lot of people. And what they ended up with is that any energy you consume on site behind your own meter, it gets to offset the energy at the retail cost. So you didn't buy that energy from PG&E in this case, and so you don't pay that full PG&E retail energy cost because you didn't buy it from them. If you export any energy at all, the way it works now is that you get what's called it's a net billing tariff. So it's the avoided cost calculator is what it is. And so a company working with the CPUC said, in these various different areas in California, here's what the value of solar energy is every hour of the day, every day of the year. So they created a model that said, here's what energy, when you put a kilowatt hour of energy on the grid in this area in California, here's what its actual value is. And that's what we're going to give you. And that was a really big change. It's not energy metering anymore. And it reduced the value of exported energy from high 20s for you guys to about 5 to 7 cents. So it's a huge change. It's a huge reduction in value. And it's one of the reasons why we got these things grandfathered on the NEM2 tariff so that, we knew it was going in a bad place. We didn't know exactly where it would end up, but this is where it ended up. And so in year 21, you're exposed to that. We've made some estimates about what we think the cost of energy is, exported energy at that time, but that's what our assumption is.
20 years start at the date of first, completed installation when it's connected to the grid?
Right. So when you receive permission to operate, PTO from PG&E.
electricity is worth considerably more when the sun's not shining, I'm assuming. So at
It is indeed.
in the future, battery investment may make sense for solar array owners. You could then
Yes,
charge
and
up.
so one of the things that the CPUC was trying to do with this transition in NEM to the net billing tariff was to actually incent customers to put in storage. And, you see that in the Title 24, building code too. If you're building a new building, commercial or even residential now, solar and batteries are required. And the state really wants you to put in batteries. Now, I don't believe they've done enough to actually create tariffs that make energy storage behind the meter for this project, for instance. It's not a compelling financial investment at this point. Whether it will be down the future is hard to say, but we have not assumed that it's going to be substantially more valuable going forward. So it's kind of a wash. You can put it in, it might save you a bit of money. That's what it looks like right now. If you put in solar that would be appropriate, appropriately sized for your system here. But the storage it's just not, it doesn't really offset your bill like solar does.
Tom, based on our current actual usage from the past 8 months, we're actually only producing about 235,000 kilowatt hours a year, but phase 2 is not yet up and running. We're not in the gym or the tech center yet. So,
The kitchen with the all-electric ovens.
right, and we've and those plans have a lot of electrical load that you assumed in your initial calculations. What if, though, our usage is below the output of the solar panels? If every year we're producing 50,000 more kilowatt hours than we use, will we get paid back under the NEM2 for that?
Not under NEM2. You do get paid for it from PG&E. With the annual true up, yes, they will pay you for excess kilowatt hours over the course of the year, but they don't pay you much. They pay you what's called the DLAP rate, which is basically what they buy power on the open market in Northern California over the last year. So that rate is somewhere in the 3 to 4 cent a kilowatt hour today. So it's not a lot. It's not as good as even the net billing tariff export. So we try not to have too much excess export. You want to dial it down there. One of the things we would do with you guys, if you think you want to go forward with it and you really want to dial in the system size, is we'd want to revisit the calculations that were originally done, I believe, in 2019, which is what we're working off of, and make sure that those are still valid. And if it looks like you're going to be using less energy than that, we can reduce that system size up to 20% and still maintain the grandfathering. So you've got wiggle room in there.
Can we pause for a moment? We do have our timed agenda item that we should get to really quickly to make sure we get public comment if and when there is any. Our timed agenda item is for information or public comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Do we have any member of the public who would like to make any comments on items that are not on tonight's agenda? See any hands raised on the Zoom?
I see no one.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure to get that in case anyone was waiting. All right, that's helpful to me, Tom, because I do have a little bit of a concern about oversizing it and not getting the bang for the buck of having done that.
Yeah, agreed with that. That's one of the things that you should definitely do if you decide to move forward, is really take a deeper look at that, because that modeling's old, and I'm sure that there have been changes in the design since then. One thing I will say that, though, is that with our school clients and basically almost all of our clients, we've seen energy usage just trending up over time, electricity usage trending up over time. So even with the efficiency measures that are going in, a lot of stuff is being moved over to electricity, and a lot more of the teaching stuff that goes on, it has electricity associated with it as well.
Related to all that, do you see any possibility that in the next 5 to 10 years, the situation with batteries will change to the point where it would be enticing to install some after the fact?
It might well. So there's, of the technologies we're talking about here, solar PV and batteries are being developed very quickly, of course. I mean, we're well aware of that. It's for, EVs primarily. And the strides that are made for EVs are brought into stationary batteries like this pretty quickly. One of the good things about the NEM2 grandfathering you have is that in this NEM3 proceeding, one of the things that was part of the ruling is that you can add battery storage to your NEM2 grandfathered systems at any time without disturbing your NEM2 grandfathering. So anytime in the next 20 years, if you want to put it in, go for it. It's not going to disturb your grandfathering at all.
Is that also true with adding solar panels? Just for example, if we went on the lower end of the array and did 180 kilowatts, could we add another 20 or 40 later? 20 or 30?
Well, what happens is you'll have an interconnection agreement that's at the size of system that you've got. And the way that Rule 21 and PG&E is written right now, they allow you to increase that size 10% for maintenance, but you can't increase it more than 10%.
So we could add 18 kilowatts if we had a 180 kilowatt array.
Right,
Okay.
right. So, and that's it. If you go beyond that, then you break your grandfathering. So you can do it if you want, and if it kind of makes financial sense, it's like the grandfathering is not helping that much based on the tariff that we could get to anyway without it, then you don't have to stay within that 10% limit.
I'm wondering if you could give us, from your perspective, any idea of your company's batting average.
Well, that's a great question, and that's the first time anybody's ever asked it that way. So, like, how accurate are we in our estimates? I think is what you're asking.
Yes.
Okay. So we've got some things going for us in the market. And some of those things are that the cost of energy, especially in the California market over the last decade, has gone up, as I mentioned, really precipitously. We generally take a pretty conservative stance around this thing. Where we're targeting the financial results of this is for our P50 numbers to be 5%, maybe 10% less than we think you're actually going to get when you implement this project, right? You put it out to bid, you might get costs that are higher than we anticipate from the market, or there might be issues that you run into, like soil issues or structural issues or things like that cause the cost to go up. So we try to bias everything a little conservative so that even when you run into those issues, there's still a little bit of upside that you get instead of, we want you to have an upside surprise. Let's put it that way. And basically all the stuff I know, that's the way it's turned out, just because we're careful with that modeling. On a couple of instances, we've gotten into projects and run into soils issues, like, there's an underground stream that existed, 3 million years ago that's 7 feet down. And so now the piers on your parking lot shade structures need to be designed completely differently, and it's more expensive. Things like that can happen. And mostly you've been able to cover that with, and it still works. So again, we try to be a little conservative because that's what you want. You want it to meet or exceed expectations. I mean, I'm not trying to sell you a PV system, you know, I'm not biased like a developer is, right? I'm on your team and trying to give you guys the best information that you need so that you can make the best decisions for yourself. So I have no incentive to make this thing look any better than it will be. I've got a little bit of incentive to make it look worse so that there's an upside when you get there.
Thank you.
Tom, I know that the carport installations are more expensive than ground mount. Does that include the cost of clearing any trees that we might need to clear for ground mount, or will that bump the ground mount up closer to the carport price?
We did not include costs for removing trees. And I remember in our original conversations, those costs were talked about being taken care of in out of different funds. And I don't know what those costs are. So if you have an estimate of those costs, we can add that up front. It's pretty easy for you to do that. So that's going to be an upfront year one cost, right? So if it costs you $500,000 to take those trees out, you can just subtract $500,000 from everything because it occurs in year one.
Can the cost to do that tree clearing in order to install ground mount be included in the total cost of the project for purposes of the 30% credit?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would guess not. And the reason is the test that the IRS uses is that it's got to be integral to the system. In other words, something that is required to make it work. Like having your attorneys go through the contracts, that's required for you to do this. They're okay with that. Any of the actual system itself obviously is necessary. They don't let you do things like fences. And if you're going to have to clear some land prep is not in it. And I would guess they wouldn't let you do that. We could ask and try to find out, but I would suspect that's not eligible.
We have to create a ground mount isn't a deductible expense?
That's correct. It's a very small expense in the grand scheme of these projects, so it doesn't really swing things much. But that's not things like restriping your parking lot. Like if you have to slurry seal it and restripe it because you put in these things, that's not integral to the system. So that's conceptually, if you think about, is this going to be something that they're going to allow us to take the ITC credit on? If it's not really integral to making that project happen, probably not. And what we would also recommend that you be fairly conservative about that. You don't want the IRS saying, hey guys, and like really digging into your stuff.
That makes sense.
So what is the definition of EPC cost?
So yeah, EPCs, engineering, procurement, and construction. So that's the vendor, that's the solar vendor. That's the company that, in this case, would do the final design on it, purchase all the components, do the construction and commissioning of it, and close out the project. So that's that solar company that you would hire. Yes, right. So soft costs are things like, in this particular modeling that you're looking at, I think our interconnection costs are in there as soft costs. We've estimated there's some interconnection costs, probably not much because you're updating everything here anyway. But if you we put costs for somebody like us, you don't have to use us, but somebody to help you run this project, right? Run the whole project, make sure it works. You've got your attorneys in there. You've got some staff overhead in there. Those are typical soft costs.
To 22%?
Somewhere in there is typical of these kind of projects.
So, I mean, if we're looking at the EPC cost of a 173 kilowatt system, that brings the cost from 1.2 million to 1.4 something.
Let's see. That's a good question. Let me just take a look at the model and make sure that that's just the EPC cost and not the fully loaded cost. Yeah, that's just the EPC cost. So we've got purchase and legal and stuff like that. We've got about $200,000 of, soft costs in there. And you may not spend that. Again, we're trying to be conservative about this so that you've got room in these numbers. So that's what the assumptions are.
I got confused. Did you say the 1.2 or 1043 under the reduced size include the soft costs or exclude them?
Exclude them.
Exclude them. So we're
Yeah.
adding 20 to 22% in addition to those prices.
Yeah, it's like, so for the 1.46, actually the top one there, yeah, we've got $195,000 of soft costs in that. In addition to that.
Because I'm looking at the 2021 document, and as a percentage, the soft costs are considerably higher than than what you just quoted.
Yeah, we may have brought it down since then.
Okay.
But that's what's in the model right now. Yep. Yeah, that's it.
Permit that we're locked in at, it has a window of what size? Is it the 173 to 217 or no?
It's 173 to 217, right?
And then as long as we build anywhere in that window, then we could add an additional 10%?
Yes. Yes, after the fact.
After the fact, right.
As quote maintenance, right?
Right.
But probably 10%. They're expecting more than 10% deterioration of your solar output in that first 5 years.
Yeah, no, I think what they're trying to do here is they're trying to say, hey, if you like have some panels you need to replace or something like that, the newer panels are going to be more efficient. And so you're going to, maybe you replace your panels and, you use the same amount of area or the same number of panels. Well, you're probably going to get maybe 10% more size out of it. So they'll let you do that.
Gotcha. They're not setting up for people to try and just nibble their way up to that break even.
No, and people don't do that either. So you just put in the PV system and then, if you need to change things, if you want to add a little bit more, you can kind of get away with it, but it's rare. I mean, generally you put it in, it just lasts, it goes out and works, and that's what it is. And, we see in reality, we see that there's about a 0.5% year degradation including the whole system now. So we've been doing some serious looking at this as well internally. And one of the things that we're seeing with the newer solar panels is the actual degradation on the solar panels is really quite low. So they're not losing a lot of power over time. But you've got the whole system around it. So you've got the inverters and you've got the wires and things like that. Sometimes you have some failures in there. Sometimes the inverters might be down for a day or a week or a month or something like that. Those kind of things are what pushes that the losses, the annual losses up closer to about 0.5% typically. We're using 0.75% annual losses, again, to be just a little conservative. And we actually have an asset management division that we look over these things and follow them and make sure that they're working for our customers. And so we do have a fair amount of that data in-house, and that's where that comes from.
So I have one more money question, and that is, how much do we have to spend to get to the RFP stage so we can actually open bids and know if we can afford it?
Well, it's a good question. So if you get, that's pretty far through the RFP stage, right? So we'd have to put together, or you'd have to put together, somebody has to put together a full RFP package, get it on the street, get the eventers interested in it, do the site walks, take a look at the proposals that come in. I wouldn't go that way. What I would do first, if you're really concerned about the pricing that comes in on this, and it's a small system, so you're going to get smaller local shops that are more interested in this kind of thing. I would go out and if we're working with you, we would go out and start calling these vendors up front before we do much work and say, okay, guys, here's what we got. Are you interested? And if you're interested, give us a ballpark price on this. I mean, where are you with something like this now? And try to get a feel for where the market is. And if it comes back and it's not $6 to $7 a watt, which I think we're at somewhere in there, if it comes back at like $9 a watt or $10, it's like really off of our assumptions, then we'd probably dig in more with the market to figure out what's going on with that. And then we come back to you and say, hey, here's what we're hearing back. Do you guys want to go forward with this and actually put that time into actually doing all that work to put it on the market and do a vendor selection? So we don't want to go out there if we're not going to get something that works. That's the short answer.
No, I appreciate the answer because I think it has, it'll be less expensive for us to pursue that. I mean,
Right.
I know that part of our concern is that we have this April 2026 deadline of having a operating, agreement, right?
Yeah.
And, if we assume that the construction's going to be a year, we're every time we have a meeting and talk about it, we're losing months to get to a point where we know whether we can swing it or not. I mean, the money isn't here. The money is supposed to come by the end of this calendar year and plenty of time to pay for it. But, it isn't in the bank yet.
Yes, so typically, of course, these things are built in the summer. The construction of these systems usually takes about 4 months. And the requirement, by the way, for being complete in March, April of 2026 is that you have your building permits basically signed off. You don't actually have to have your permission to operate from the utility because that could take a while and the utility could get in the way of that. So it's just getting your building permits signed off, which is basically what you need to do to go out and request permission to operate from the utility.
I mean, me ask what I asked before a slightly different way. How much would we spend between now and September if we gave you the go-ahead and you got your market analysis and came back to us late August, early September and said, here's what we know?
Right. If you wanted us to just go out and talk to folks in there, you know, typically what we've been doing with the district is we've said, hey, let's do a $5,000 time and materials, right? And we'll just chew on that, and hopefully we won't use it up. And so we'll go out and talk to them, and who knows? But I can't imagine we'd use more than $5,000 talking to, you know, various different vendors out there. It's probably less than that, but that's how we've been working with you guys for the last few years.
Would you need to know the exact locations of the panels in order to do that? Or would you need to know how much of it would be ground mount versus carport at a minimum?
You know, what we do is we've got these scenarios we're working with right now, and they're close enough because we're not going to get tight estimates from vendors. We'd not be asking for that. So we're looking for a ballpark from the vendors, like, what's your feel for this kind of thing? Are we in the $6.5 or $6.5 range? Are we in the $8 range? Where are you? And so the stuff we have now is fine. It sounds like you guys have concerns about the actual costs we're going to get from the market. Have you talked to vendors there and gotten some information?
Just anxiety about construction projects in general.
And
Well
just
placed.
from hearing it from you as well, that it seems like it might be hard to find vendors, and yeah, everything costs more here than anywhere else on earth, it seems like, so.
Indeed.
Well, I'd be inclined to go forward with that, and while Tom is doing that market research, we can continue finalizing locations, and, which I think we're getting closer to every day, but I don't know that we're there today.
While we have Tom here, could we talk about the, you know, cutting down the trees between the
options.
two fields and what that would look like? I mean, Tom, if you have the map that you created,
It's up on the screen.
you have an area called the cypress trees.
Right.
Ground mount, and you've not gone much to the southern part of that, and I think part of that was because of the shading from the C1 and C2.
Yeah, really, the reason why it doesn't go up towards C1 and 2, or coming down south, in this case, towards C1 and C2, is that that's a slope there. So it slopes down off the parking lot, as you guys know, down to that field. Our assumption to put GM, the ground mount cypress trees in there, is that all of that cypress tree row would be removed, because those trees kind of between C2 and the GM cypress trees thing, those things are south of that, and they would be shading that ground mounted area quite a bit. They're also above it. So that slopes down towards the GM cypress trees area there. So our assumption is you'd remove that whole row of cypress trees all the way.
I think what Michael's getting at, if we did not do the carport units, could the panels extend any further south on the ground mount array?
We could do that. They would have to be spread out more.
Okay.
We could also widen the array. I mean, we could figure out how to put more panel area in there. We could widen it a little bit to do that. There's a number of different ways we could work that. We'd also want to make sure that, you've got a property line up there at the north edge. We went, within, I think, 10 feet of what we thought the property line might be, or maybe it was 20, where the back fence is on that stuff. We'd have to nail all that stuff down.
We have that surveyed now, that's a
Right.
good thing.
Oh, good.
So in regards to that, they've actually just been putting some markers out just in the last couple of days. And it affects what you show as the ground mount track area.
Uh-huh.
Your array kind of assumes the entire almost drip line of those trees is on our land,
Right.
but it appears that the stumps are more or less the property line.
Mm-hmm.
So that area, although it's been my first choice all the way along, I think wouldn't quite accommodate it as you have it drawn. You show, I'm not sure who gave me this, but I got one map that shows a 51.4 foot overall, I think, fence to fence width along there. In a situation like that, how narrow could that become and still make sense to construct? Do you follow the question?
Yes. So the arrays themselves, the narrow it is, I would say you want to be like a minimum of like 10 to probably 15 feet, something like that. That would be the array.
Uh-huh.
And then you need, 6. I mean, generally, we like to have like a drive aisle around the things. But there is a minimum setback, and I don't know what that is off the top of my head for Marin County or for Mendocino County.
So you mean setback between the panels and the fence or property line?
Yeah,
I see. Well,
might be 10 feet.
But if you have that map in front of you, the cypress tree area was originally measured as containing, could be able to contain 200 plus kilowatt. If we had the ability to move farther south, there's concern in the northwest part of that area that we want to not have panels to preserve an existing motocross area. But there still should be, we should be able to fit 74 kilowatts in that space, I would think. I mean, I'm not the engineer here, but it's just.
Right. We just work with you guys to see how we could shoehorn the stuff in there. And yeah, it sounds like you've got a bicycle pump track down there now. Mm-hmm. I want to come out and ride that, so.
It's open.
Great.
Okay, but you say we don't have to make this determination now. We can hold off on that and gather more information.
Right. We just, figure out how much we could get down there. It could be that you'd need to move the pump track or something like that. But yeah, we do what we can to get at least the 173 in there.
Could we also do a combination of the GM cypress tree area plus the track slope to get to 173 and 200?
Then you'd probably have more than enough.
Right, and then it would require a smaller amount from the cypress tree area.
Right. Yeah, we could, we can work with whatever you've got there. And I think the big deal here is taking out those trees, right? The cost of that and, just going through whatever permitting requirements for taking out trees. That can be, of course, a real struggle. Community requirements.
So anyone want to make a motion to proceed with the market analysis and keep moving along?
Also move.
Second?
Any further comment from the board at this point with that motion on the table? I think that would include a $5,000 deposit to Tom's firm for time and materials.
That sounds reasonable. Tom thinks that's sufficient. I mean, I even bumped up to 10 if we needed to keep things moving along, or that you would stay in touch with us. I think you understand, but I think I feel pressure to keep this moving as quickly as we possibly can with that final connection or final sign-off deadline.
So maybe one of the things that could be included in that $5,000 is a site visit and talk about more concretely, our options or our preferences. I think part of the problem, Tom, is that with 5 board members, we have 5 different first choices, and reaching
Probably more than that, right?
Yeah, I have my own 3 different first choices.
reaching a consensus has proven difficult.
Yeah, I was a board member for 8 years myself, so I understand that dynamic.
Does this plan keep us on track for the deadline? Waiting until August or September to make a final decision?
I think that's a question for you, Tom. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, is this okay to wait another 3 months?
yes, I think so, but you're going to want, so if you back up from constructing next summer, then you're going to want to make a decision about this in August, September at the latest, right? To go out and put the procurement together, get that done, get the vendor on board and contracted. Then you've got to go through DSA. And if you're going to be removing those trees, that's not insignificant work by itself. So that would all have to be queued up and ready to go and done by next summer if you're going to build next summer. If you're not building on the buildings and you're not building in the parking lot, it's a little easier to cordon that area off and work during the school year. So that's a possibility as well, but we like to avoid that as much as possible because just the disturbance to the facility and the staff and the students is, it's just something we try to avoid.
I guess some comment, but I could see changing the motion to proceed and only pause if Tom's research brings up estimated costs that are 15% above estimates, something like that.
So our next board meeting is August 22. How far in advance of that meeting do you think, Tom, you would be able to gather that market research and at least get back to Windspirit and I as the facilities committee so that we could sort of do our own work before that meeting?
Well, we could start reaching out now. I mean, we're in the middle of June, so I don't think it would take more than a month to get a hold of vendors and try to get some idea of what's going on in the market about that. So I would give it a month of work for us. Let's say it's middle of July. And then we can have a discussion about it. If we're not seeing what we want to see in the market, we could go back out and really pound the pavement more and see if we can convince any vendors to basically commit to proposing on it.
And if things were coming in within your estimates, how much more would you be able to get done in that next month if we had given you go ahead now?
Well, as soon as you guys are comfortable with this, right? And it's something you're comfortable with and you want to go forward with it. If you tell us that, then we can what we would do is we'd immediately start putting together the procurement package, right? So that whole RFP package gets put together. It gets run by you, at least your committee first before we put it on the street. And it would take maybe 6 weeks if we go pretty quick to put that package together and get it out on the street. Things can go, we're getting into the fourth quarter now, and things slow down a lot around the end of the year just with the holidays and, everybody's trying to do everything at the end of the year. And so things get pretty slow in there. If we get to putting it on the street in December, then we usually want to give the vendors at least 6 weeks to respond, just because they're busy doing everything else. But we can work out that timing.
there any reason we can't have a real quick board meeting in the middle of July or whenever if it's necessary? Does that cause any problems?
Either that, or could the motion be that we go full speed ahead, get the market research back, it gets circulated to the board, and we all agree that if any board member wants to put the brakes on at that point, we will put the brakes on until we are able to meet again.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the $1.2 million plus 22% soft cost, which is 1.464 million, which we don't have on hand at this point. And we're only be getting 1.1 million from the state before the end of the year. So where's that other $300,000 coming from? It comes from,
Well, we do have it on hand, and we will get that 30% back.
well, we don't have the 1.4 million without taking into robbing from our funds that we're dedicating to phase 2.
Which honestly would be
Or
fine with me,
Fund
honestly.
17, or any, I mean, we have
Well,
$1 million,
you
we have $1 million sitting
you
in
could
the
take, you
bank.
could take non-building funds and use them for building. Fund 17 is it's a general fund, not a building fund.
Okay.
So I was just surprised you were going to take those funds.
I'm just saying, you said we don't have the money. We do have the money.
Okay,
We
you're
also
saying
do have the
cash flow
bond
wise,
funds.
cash flow wise.
Yeah, and we have the bond funds. You're right. I mean, right, there are multiple.
You know,
I mean, right now, we're talking about using non-building funds for buildings, so, right, the $1.1 million when it comes in from the state, as I understand it, is unrestricted.
no, it has to be for building. It goes into the
Not
building
sure
fund.
that we've been told that.
Yeah.
My understanding is it's a reimbursement.
It is. It's a reimbursement for money we've spent out of the bond fund, and therefore.
We can talk about that another time. We should get clarification on that, because I don't think it's clear whether it's restricted or not.
But we don't need anywhere near that. What we've been told
We
is.
need $5,000 to $10,000.
No, I understand.
You're right, we don't have in hand the money to
Yeah.
pay it, but the lion's share of this cost would go to the vendor, assuming we selected them.
And if you're feeling that way and it's $1.6 million, then what the motion would be is you email Jason, stop, and we all stop. I just don't think we need to wait till August 22nd to decide that. If one person says stop, we stop.
Sure, if you want to give me that responsibility and power, I'll be happy to exercise it if I think it's necessary.
Between now and August 22nd, that's all I'm saying. I mean,
No, I understand. It's
Yeah.
not carte blanche.
Right, it's not a full veto for all time, yes,
Does it
exactly.
make sense to just give him the power to say we need a board meeting?
I like that better.
Yeah. Give any of us the power to say, we need to talk about this in
Right.
July. I mean, we'll try to not have it during anybody's,
Do we need
Trip.
to, if we were to give you the direction to move forward now, Tom, do we need to choose where in that window of size? Or can it still be undecided? Because I think site visit might help us narrow that down also. The ones, whatever it is, the one.
Yeah, 173 to
Yeah,
217.
Exactly.
Yeah, I already did a site visit, which is how we came up with the sites.
With like the property line that that your map doesn't quite show accurately.
Right.
How it affects the pump track, if we skip the carport, could we, all those variables, I think, could sway all of our opinions, as Michael said, which already go 5 different directions.
Mhm.
So, would it be, my question was, would you be able to proceed without us saying it's going to be specifically 175, 200, 218?
Sure. No, that's no problem. Because again, we're talking in generalities with these vendors, right? We're going to say, hey, it's 180 to 220 kilowatts. It's here, it's on this site. It's groundless, it's all ground mount. What do you think you guys can do it for? If it's got these carports, what does it look like? Those are the kind of conversations we're going to have with them.
Okay, so I guess I'll pull my motion, and I think basically what I made last month, or whatever it was, a week and a half ago, to go ahead and proceed with the caveat that Tom will let us know if prices exceed 15% more than his estimates. And we will,
So you're taking,
hold on, let me finish, and then we'll discuss it.
okay.
At that time, we'll have a special board meeting as soon as possible to discuss. that clear?
So are we suggesting that we have the board meeting in the summer?
Only
For
if,
that?
only if cost estimates, only if the estimates come in above what he's given us already.
But
Okay.
I'm not sure that we can afford, I mean, you know, you're talking now about going up to the 217 kilowatt hours again, so let's
Well,
take.
I'm somewhere in between, I'm saying.
We're talking about getting an
let's-
estimate
I'm
if we're
getting an
doing that.
estimate to stay within our permit,
So,
somewhere within our permit, so that's as low as 173, as high as 217, or whatever those
all right,
numbers
so
are.
it's.
So wait, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
So if you went back to the higher of the four estimates on here, 1.46 million, 1.4600. And then you're adding 22% for soft costs. 1.46000 times 1.0, 1.22, clear. 1.22. Oops, that didn't work. 1.4600, no, clear.
Michael, we might have to go with the smaller one, I mean, if that's the point.
No,
I
but
agree.
Your motion would allow us to take that and another 15% before we'd have another chance to talk about it.
No, no, the motion was to let Tom start doing,
No,
to do research,
Right.
and then he said we don't have to decide.
but your motion was to go ahead as long as the cost didn't exceed 15%.
To go ahead and research vendors and start working on procurement papers for somewhere in that window.
So, I don't know, I just don't see the month that we'd spend would involve that much work on procurement papers. When you haven't had the design done. The next big expensive part is having the design built, right? And for that, you need the location.
I'm just going on what he just said, is that he could be moving along in that process, unless I misunderstood. My main concern is that we don't wait any longer to get moving, because the last thing I want is to be 90% built and the clock run out. And that's my concern, having seen how these construction projects go, and your concern that costs come in within estimate. So I'm trying to thread something that takes those two concerns and keeps it moving.
Okay, maybe I should ask my question a little bit differently to you. How much are you willing to pay on the solar arrays? Is it 1.2 million before the 30% credit? 1.5 million before the 30% credit?
Well, I would flip it around and say it depends on how much money we have.
Well, we don't know how much we have. That's the problem.
Right, but we've been told we're going to have 1.2, I think, coming back by the end of the calendar year, right?
Right?
And then we could dip into some of our phase 3 funds if we agreed that we wanted to do that, or we could pull it back to our minimum build to still qualify for our NEEM 2.0, which would save us some money. And we could also push for ground mount only, because I think the numbers you were quoting, you were going for the mixed, right? The ground mount only estimates are considerably lower. And my personal preference is ground mount only. That does rely on some permitting. But we could always fall back to the carport portion of the permit if the permitting delayed us to that point, and that would depend on timing with whomever whom Tom recommended or we selected as a vendor. You know, obviously, at some point, they're gonna have to know where they're building it before they can give us an exact cost. There's definitely variables in several directions.
What I'm
We don't
hearing
have
you
the
say
answers.
is that we have multiple opportunities to cut costs.
Yeah,
We do.
Well,
Yeah, no,
how
I'm not disagreeing with the statement. I'm just saying that there's a wide range in potential costs here.
right.
And we haven't identified exactly how much money we're getting. And we've already made commitments, it seemed to me, on spending the other part of the phase 3 funds without even knowing for sure that those funds will actually materialize, because we haven't gotten the final bills for phase 2. I'm just saying it's chancy, and I'm anxious because of it.
What's the risk we're taking before August 22nd? We're not spending more than
Well,
$5,000.
that's what I thought, but I thought that Winsper came back with a motion that was much,
It's to keep doing the work. to keep doing the work, to prepare ourselves to go out for bids.
But if it's not gonna cost any more between now and August 22nd than the $5,000, then there's no need for an additional motion.
I think there might be more. Tom, do you want to weigh in? Would there possibly be more than the 5,000 if we go ahead with, you start putting together procurement papers, you were saying, et cetera?
If we start putting together, I'd assign a project manager and have them start working on putting together the whole package. I mean, you guys can tell us how much to spend by a certain date, and we won't go beyond that. Uh, I actually, I don't know off the top of my head, but, I don't know off the top of my head. I can get back to you about that.
I mean, will we be safe at 15,000, 20,000, or you not? I understand if you don't want to lock in a number. I respect that too. That's
I'm
my
a little reticent to do it here real time without really thinking about it.
don't. I've been
Yeah.
in the same position.
Can I propose an amendment to your motion?
Sure.
Or just, I'm just proposing. What if we agree to move forward working with Tom and not spend more than $15,000 before we come back to the board on August 22nd?
Because I don't have a sense of what the $15,000 is gonna be spent on. It's not defined.
I really disagree with you, Michael. I feel like this decision it's not up to us. We're not the important board members. That's the important board member. This is the person we're deciding this about. I'm 74 years old. Climate change is here. We need to be responsible about climate change, not only just globally and locally, but for people who are a lot younger than us. I think it's critical. And I think worrying about a little bit of money is really not important. I feel that very strongly.
My response to that is not to disagree with you, but to say that the true issue about living with climate change is reducing our electrical needs. Not by putting a Band-Aid on top of it, which are solar panels, which have to be replaced in 25 years. It's to reduce your consumption by 50%. Not have lights on all the time, not have the computers on all the time. We waste so much energy in a facility like this because nobody is worried about, the fact that we're spending $8,000 a month on it.
Well, that's a long discussion, but I disagree with you.
So one of the things that I might be able to do to help out with this is I could put together a proposal that says, hey, let's do a task one, which is go out, do a market analysis, maybe talk to the vendors that would be interested, try to identify interested vendors and keep that part less than $5,000, right? So maximum $5,000 spending on that. And then come back to you and have a task two in that says, okay, if we get a notice to proceed from you guys, which, you guys can take a look at it, if the pricing coming in looking good and you're comfortable with it, if you're comfortable letting the committee say, yeah, that looks like something that's reasonable, give us a notice to proceed on the next $10,000 and we'll just get started on that thing and then, keep the ball rolling. That's a way to do it as well.
Yeah, I think the only problem is we have to wait till August 22nd to do that, unless we do something different. Well, right now we do have a motion on the table from Wind Spirit. Do you want to keep that motion on the
I think
table?
I'm comfortable with it, yeah.
Well, it sounded to me like Tom's okay waiting until August 22nd. That's what he initially said was August, September.
Well,
couple
but I
other-
also heard him, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple other thoughts is that I really, really don't want to dig into Fund 17, because I think that we've worked hard to preserve Fund 17 through our budget reductions. And remember, if we do ground mount, we have to take out trees somewhere, and so that's going to be a major cost as well. That's not figured into that. But I thought Tom said August 22nd will be fine to wait until. to you guys.
Did I hear you right, Tom, saying that you could move along more quickly, though? If we, that's what I thought I heard you say, that if we only gave you the 5,000 to just basically go out and do market research, and you got some answers, then you'd be cooling your heels for a bit, for about a month, possibly.
Yes,
That's what I
That-
want to avoid.
yeah, which is, it's just a matter of things get tighter and we'd be, we'd be starting a month later. But is it the end of the world? Probably not.
There's projects on our phase 3 list that I would bump to make this happen, personally.
Me too.
Not disagreeing with you or kind of for both, yeah, for my own, yeah, because I just think it's an important thing to happen. And this is something we discussed from the very beginning of bond approval, and I feel pretty strongly about making it happen. And I think that we've got a competent consultant, and I'd like to keep the ball rolling.
Okay, do you want to clarify what your motion was that Mark seconded and make sure we still have a second?
Do you think you have it clear, Aaron?
You want to hear what I wrote?
Sure. Then I have to try and rephrase it, see what you got.
We have a motion by trustee Ohm, seconded by trustee Morton to proceed with the solar project with the caveat that Tom will inform the board of any 15% increase over the original estimate, keeping the number of kilowatts within the permitted allotment, and if a meeting is necessary in July, we could discuss it then.
Yeah, that's basically it. I guess, to clarify, Tom would not, if the numbers, if estimates are greater than 15%, if the actuals are greater than 15% off, he will stop work and let us know. And we will either have a special meeting or reconvene at our next meeting, depending on timing.
So we'll make the final decision of the placement of the solar panels on August 22nd, or
Maybe even later, I think.
later than that?
Yeah, at some
Okay.
point.
You are going to want to make that decision pretty quick. Just, I don't want to put extra pressure on it, but if you're going to be taking out those trees, unless you currently have a plan for how to do that and you know how you're going to get that through the permitting process, that.
Work is actually one thing we have a dearth of in this area, and we
Right.
just recently had to do that for another project and had more bidders than I think we've had on any project in my board tenure. And so I think we could actually, the cost of that, I would guess, would be 100,000 or less, is my guess for one of those, either one of those sections. Maybe a little more, there's a lot of material. But we had a much more complicated bit of tree work done over on another site, and it came in at, I think, right around 100,000.
That's great. And as long as the community doesn't rise up about the trees,
That's a whole nother possibility.
that's the big piece.
I'd suggest that we make the final decision on location on August 22nd or later, so I can get input from the student body on what their opinions are on the whole project and those locations.
No guarantees from me. I appreciate that. Some of these kids maybe have to come in the summer and weigh in.
I mean, you could also do a survey this week and send it to the board so we can consider it.
That's true.
Yeah,
I'll work on that.
Before they leave for summer, yeah,
That would be good in terms of timing.
yeah,
I'll do that.
that'd be great. All right, sounds like we have a motion on the table and it's seconded. Any comments from the public before we vote on the motion?
I see no one.
Okay,
Student trustee Kinsland?
Can I
Yes.
make a comment?
sure.
Or a question? I mean, are you assuming that we now have a maximum thing, a price that you're comfortable with of over $2 million, which is the,
We're talking about doing work between now and August 22nd.
That's all we're
We
talking
haven't approved building the project yet.
okay, well, I just want to be clear on that, because.
It's a
when you-
motion to
when-
proceed with haste in between now and August 22nd, so we know more.
Right,
Yeah, I would not be comfortable with a $2 million price tag.
okay. So, because, I mean, I think that.
This is not approval of a solar project. It is approval of
Going forward.
working forward on it,
Up to,
until we have more
The
information.
goal is to
point is
get
to
us, the
know
goal is to get us
if it could be a
closer
$2
to
million
the numbers that you've been asking about. That's the
a,
goal.
I understand.
As quickly as possible to get
Right.
us closer to a number, a more solid number.
Well, it
Right,
seems like,
so-
it seems like this problem would be solved if maybe you just took the 15% number off and we just say, let's get a market analysis. Tom will email me and I will email the board, right?
But
And
we,
then-
but we'd also like him to start working on the procurement package if it
Yeah,
looks
right.
like it's
That's the
right.
idea,
We
is
want
if
more
it-
than that.
If he's done his homework and he's,
So
you know,
we'd
his
like-
batting average, although I never heard a number, he sounded pretty good. Then hopefully we can move right along.
Yeah. I don't think we're risking much money here.
I just don't see the specificity that you think is
Well,
there.
Okay.
I don't know, I mean, I'm happy with, to spend the 5,000 and decide later. I don't understand what we're spending the additional monies on.
If, after, the idea is that Tom might start putting together procurement, and he might continue his work some. So he might get up to 10 or 15 or maybe even 20,000. I would think. I mean, maybe it's only 15.
We don't want to slow
But
him
I
down
think that's
doing the
will
work.
be money well spent in terms of attempting to stay on some kind of time frame to get us to the finish line. I mean, that's, I guess, that's what I mean, you've seen how these projects go and how long they take. You've done more than I have on the school side. They take forever, right? And we don't have that much time. Like, that's really what's driving me. If we had 2 more years, I would not be pushing this like I am. I would feel like, fine, let's talk about it, let's let Tom do a little work, let's, go out to for the
No, I mean,
tree
as I
permitting.
understand it, once we have a site located, we can't do the architectural work until there's a site.
Right.
The architectural work has to go through DSA. So we're probably looking, between those two things, 6 months to 9 months. So you're right, that's taking us up to the window of the thing. But the fact is that once you start the architectural part, the procurement part isn't gonna happen until after the architectural stuff is at least halfway
Well,
done.
not necessarily, because whether these are ground mount or carport, it's still the same panel going on there, correct me if I'm, right, Tom, is that correct? The mounting system might change, but the panel itself is the same, and that's potentially the longest lead time, maybe the transform, or the inverters, and those could all, if,
Yeah, most of these, there aren't really long lead times in here because I don't think we'd be using transformers. We're not doing any significant size transformer with this work. You guys just upgraded your service from PG&E anyway, so that's all been set up so that it'll handle this load. I don't see any really significant long lead time things in there. Going through DSA for either a carport or a ground mount, generally the vendors that we work with have plan-checked or pre-checked PC designs that are already pre-checked by the DSA, and so they can go over the counter. And it's not the 6 to 9 month tangle it is to try to put something on a roof. So it's a matter of just getting an appointment with the DSA and going into the appointment and working it over the counter with them. So again, that can be done pretty quickly, typically. So a couple of months, 3 months for that, for these kind of systems.
I think you just said it doesn't really matter.
well, what do you mean, it's,
That if we start on August 22nd, we're in fine shape.
I didn't hear him say that, but.
Well,
But
you
we
just
have-
took my 6 to 9 months and reduced it to 3 months, so that's 6 months extra time.
We have a motion on the table with a second. Let's go ahead and vote on it.
Student trustee Kvinzland,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
No.
Trustee Ohm?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes. Okay, I think we can let you go, Tom. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate
Okay,
it.
it's been a pleasure.
I think what this means is we will be sending you a $5,000 deposit to get working and doing the market research part, and we'll let you
Sure.
work with Jason on that.
Yeah, and we won't spend more money than is required.
Appreciate that.
Just to do the work. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank
Thanks,
you,
guys.
Tom. Appreciate your
Have a good
time.
evening. Yeah. See ya.
Bye.
One more thing. Jason, I think it'd be great if you send him SHN's map
Okay.
so that he has that for reference.
All right. We are up to item 8, which is reports. Knut, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. All right. So, for this past, I sent out 2 surveys for this past report that I was working on, and I'll cover the one that I sent out to ASB first. So, a little bit about district issues that people would like to touch on. There's a lot of the same things from the last report that I gave, and I think I'm definitely going to focus on some more of those next year. Like, I think, I'm just going to try to focus on a lot of those things that I see here next year. And then I have another question, which is if ASB is excited for graduation, and 89.9% of people are excited for graduation, while 11.1% of people are not. And then the third question here is, since we're at the end of the year, do you have any regrets from this academic year? And this person says, nope, forgive and forget. This person says no. Another person says, I regret not doing the best I could. This person says, no, I got all A's. I just wish I didn't stress out as much. And then I asked the general question about sports and their opinion on that. And they say that they are super excited for next year's soccer season. And there's also a lot of sadness around lacrosse ending, which is to be expected. There was definitely a community around that. And then for the next one, which class are you looking forward to next year? We have 3 responses for culinary, so that is a popular response there. We also have 4 responses for culinary, remind me. 1 for ceramics and another one for photography. And then I think that is a conclusion of the ASB report. And then I also did a general survey out to everyone. And one of those questions was, what changes would you like to see in this district next year? And I specified that the seniors do not need to fill this out because obvious reasons. But this person says, longer lunches, 45 minutes of lunch after being in class for 3 hours is crazy and is not enough, especially if I can't eat whatever I have left during class. This person says, good milk. This person says, I would like to see more involvement activities with the school. And I think what they mean by that is just more like stuff like homecoming and stuff like that, which will definitely be something that ASB can touch on personally for that. And then this person has a more extended response. An independent study option for out of district. It will vastly improve sports if you gave people out of district the opportunity to play, and it does not have to impact the student to teacher role ratios. And then moving on, I asked people, will you be attending school next Friday? And preface, I did only get 16 responses for this, but it was sent out to the entire student body, so it probably roughly represents it. 31% of people will not be attending school on Friday, and 68.8% of people will be attending school this Friday. And then I also asked people, what was their favorite moment from the past school year? This person says AE week, rock climbing, or ultimate beach frisbee. This person says Bravo. This person says library aid. Eastman teaching us about types of art in AP Lit. 2 responses that say prom. Homecoming, we need to do more school events together like we have done in the previous years, this person says. And Cal Selly performance at the CTE Showcase, which I definitely did enjoy, and I know a lot of people really enjoyed all the CTE performances this year. I've heard from a lot of people that it was the best year yet, so that's definitely a cool thing. And that pretty much covers everything I have to say. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Knut. Any questions for Knut?
Yeah, I would ask, just
Yeah.
your own impression, what is your reaction to your experience of being in this new building for a year?
Well, it's definitely a lot better than what we had before with all the construction noises down there. But I feel like it's definitely like, it feels very optimized in here. And there's like a good flow, I feel like, between classes. It also seems like, I don't know, it just has a better atmosphere, and definitely people are like glad to be in this building.
Thank you.
Were you in here at all?
Before?
Yeah.
I mean, I had experienced like just coming in
But
here
not as a
for,
s- not as a
not
high
as a
school
student,
student.
no.
Right.
Our experience was
Yeah.
in construction, so.
Great. Thank you, Knut. And that would be great to hear from the students about the solar locations. So
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
I'll get that out.
All right. Kim, you're up. Apologies for the delay.
We are wrapping up the school year. It is busy. We've had a lot of activity since the last time I was here, presenting to you guys. As I was going through photos and thinking of all the things that have happened, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be up there for an hour, but not really. I would like to start off with a humongous thank you to the K-8 staff. We have had a very good year at the K-8 school, and I'm constantly reminded that the majority is due to the people that work there and spend endless hours planning for students and working with students and parents and families to make such a great school site. So thank you to school staff. One of the things that I wanted to highlight is our performing arts course. Chelsea Thompson, who taught that this year, put on a variety show with the help of Kara Starkweather and Lori LaPaul. And so it was a typical variety show that the K-8 students got to attend, and there were different acts, a variety of acts, and it was just really nice to see the students to be able to perform and be on stage. And be proud of it. And from what Chelsea said, it was very student-driven, the different acts that they performed, that they worked on in class throughout the semester. And it was a great event. We had community members and families attend as well. We squeezed into the multipurpose room, and it was a little small, but it worked out well. We also, the PTO brought back the K-8 Talent Show, which was a big hit once again. This is the first time in 5 years that we've held a talent show, and we had many, many acts. I would like to say a big thank you to the PTO president, Maya Stewart, for organizing all of the acts. She came in for 2 days and helped students decide what they wanted to do, which is no small task for young kiddos. They know they want to be on stage, but they don't know what their talent is quite yet. So pulling that out of them was a big deal. We brought Doug Nunn back as our MC, which was great. It was fantastic to see him. And thank you, of course, to Marshall and his crew were there doing the audio-visual events. We also hosted a barbecue and silent auction with that event. So it was just a really great community event. It was very well attended. Overall, I want to give a big thank you to the PTO. They are a great group right now who is working hard to better the K-8 school. They put on Popcorn Fridays. They hold our annual book fair in November. They held a readathon in April. That was a big hit with the kiddos. The talent show, they host our field day every year at the end of the year and have done a lot of staff appreciation, meals, gifts, activities for the staff. So they've just been working really hard to make the K-8 school a special place. So thank you to the PTO. The Mendocino College Foundation organized the adoption of 3 fifth graders. And so we have Oliver Novoa, Doris Mendoza, and Mateus Sanchez, who received that scholarship. They receive $1,000 if they attend Mendocino College or $500 if they attend another university. So that's always a special event. We held our monthly buddy class activity, and one of the things that we did this time was do chalk art out on the sidewalk in the quad, and so we had multi-age groups working together on different plots, different squares to decorate the quad area, and it was just again a really heartwarming event for the kiddos, and I always love seeing the older students work with the younger students to build something. Our K-8 open house was very well attended this year. We ended up being on a beautiful but blustery day, and I thought the wind might make people want to stay away, but it was, again, very well attended. And it's always nice to see the students excited to show their parents around the classroom and kind of what they worked on this year. So it was a lot of fun. Our 8th graders got to go to an overnight trip this year. They went to the Chabot Space and Science Center and got to sleep in the Science Center. It was very exciting. The kids came back exhausted and happy. They had good stories about it. So thank you to Sage Anderson, who organized that trip and came up with a great idea for them, something new for our kiddos. Our 7th graders experienced a 7th grade trip outing. We kept it local, and they did canoeing up Big River, and then the Stanford Inn hosted them in the garden and gave them a garden tour, and then invited them to help with a kind of demonstration and working in the garden, and gave them treats from the Stanford Inn, which was well received. But a big thank you to the Stanford Inn and Catch a Canoe for donating that to our students. We held the grad dance this last Saturday, and probably one of the best attended dances I've ever been to and hosted. It was they were adamant that they wanted it to be a very formal theme, and it was interesting to see that the majority of students really did dress up in formal wear for it. So we held it at the community center, which was a great venue. They were excited to be somewhere else off the K-8 campus. I think that made it feel special as well. And so Kathy Holmes, I'd like to say a big thank you to Kathy Holmes and Sage again for organizing it, but Kathy Holmes put in a lot of time and energy decorating and organizing the food and just making sure all over went smoothly. I'd also like to highlight and thank our retirees this year, Linda Freeling, Sarah Fries, and Mary Moffett, and just recognize them and thank them for all the work that they have done throughout the years, and we will definitely be missing them in their current and past positions. And also just to let you know that we have 8th grade promotion coming up on Thursday at 2 o'clock. So if you want to come join us, it'll be great. Yeah.
The adopt a student, those were 8th graders. So if they,
5th grade students.
5th graders,
Yeah.
if they go to college in 7 years?
Yeah. They track them.
They get the money then,
Yes.
but they get told now.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And they give them like a $25 gift card and a certificate. Yeah. Something to look forward to.
Interesting.
And hopefully promote, the drive and want to go to college. So.
Has that been going on for a bit? Or is that
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh.
Started in 2007.
There we go.
England.
My mom used to head that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they get 1,000 if they go to Mendocino College and 500 if they go somewhere else.
Yep.
Gotcha. A lot of tracking there.
It is. Yep. All right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, Jason.
All right, so I think much of what I'm reporting on is in the board agenda, so I'm just going to do some one shout out and some reminders. I guess I want to shout out to Alex Fossey for the work he's done in the high school garden. If you came to the CTE showcase, you saw it, but it is amazing. The variety of plants and vegetables he has down there, and just how tidy it is. It's very impressive. So if you find time, I would walk through the garden. It's beautiful. And then also at the K8, I know John Moran and Diane Price and probably others that I'm not mentioning have done a great job at the K8 gardens too. So we have, and Albion and Comptree too. So we have gardens all over the place. And that's really up and coming, and we do a great job in that regard. We had a staff party here at the end of the year gathering in this room yesterday. I thought it was pretty well attended. We're hoping to do something off-site and a little bigger next year. And then if you want to punch your graduation and promotion punch cards, I'll give you a card, and if you attend all four, you'll get a prize at the end. We have the Sunrise High School tomorrow at 4 o'clock here in the quad. We have the K8 promotion 2 o'clock on Thursday, the comm school graduation 4 o'clock on Thursday, and then the high school graduation 3:30 here in the quad on Friday. Busy, busy.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any questions for Jason? All right. MTA, do we have Diana or Josh on the line today?
I don't see anyone.
I see no one.
Okay. And CMIS?
I see no one.
All right. Board trustee reports. Mark, would you like to start us off?
Nothing today.
Michael?
I've been on a couple phone calls related to our water project, which was appealed to the Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commission seems to be more concerned about issues that weren't part of the appeals in the appeal, but are still have to be addressed because that's their power. So we're kind of dead in the water at this point on that.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Yep.
I have nothing.
Okay. Couple of things. I got to go on that 8th grade field trip to the Oakland Space and Science Center. It was a blast. I was exhausted. I am too old to sleep on the floor of a museum with 8th graders, or without 8th graders for that matter. It didn't make a difference, but it was a lot of fun. Let's see, the scholarship night, as I said before, was really wonderful just to see those seniors receiving scholarships, hearing about what their plans are, and hearing from the community members who presented scholarships, the things that they saw in those students that made them want to support them and invest in them. That was really cool. I also just wanted to mention our retirees, James Roble, who's retiring from the IT department, Mary Moffett, and then 2 teachers, Linda Freeling and Sarah Fries, which I was lucky enough that my son had both of them. I actually got to go on a Petaluma Adobe trip with Linda Freeling's 4th grade class back in 2018. It was the last one of those for a while before COVID, and that was a whole lot of fun. And I got to see her in action as a teacher, and she was wonderful. I saw Sarah Fries mostly by Zoom from my son's bedroom, so that's a little different, but she was wonderful as well. So we will definitely miss both of them at the K8. Yeah, I'm looking forward to my punch card because I plan on cashing that in.
All right.
So, all right, 10.1, Don, you're up. And once again, sorry it's later than we'd like. Yeah, exactly.
Actually, before I start, I wanted to mention, Michael and Mark are concerned about using less energy consumption. Building codes now do take that into account. You notice that those lights are dimmer than those lights, and it's because they have daylight sensors. So it's programmed to have a certain light level, and if the sun is sufficient, those dim to save energy. Likewise, in the offices, there's plug management systems. So if somebody leaves a computer on, it goes off. And then all the rooms have occupancy sensors, so they go off if there's no movement. So making baby steps towards your goals there.
That is part of the building code now, right?
That is part of the building code and gets more
For
and more
all
stringent.
houses have to have.
That's
leaving the
commercial.
room sensor?
No, that's commercial. There's other requirements for housing. You know, more on plug safety and stuff like that. But for commercial, those are 3 examples of saving, you're trying to use less energy than more. So, okay. After that note, I'll carry on here. Where are we going next one? You know, we're tracking as we expected on the expenses. As I mentioned last time, we pretty much have expended all our contingency, and we had hoped to hold off on half of it or so. But the good note is that we didn't spend it all on unknowns or unforeseens. You know, we added the roof to the project and a number of other things. So I see it as a positive. Where I see that we're going to have some savings is in our allowances. Anyway, where are we going to next slide? So kind of deja vu like last time, but maybe not as extreme of not getting done as fast as we'd like. I mean, I was there today. There are a lot of workers working now. They're finally getting, they're getting serious and they're moving forward. But I don't think they're going to meet the goals that they had set. Remember, first week of June, they were supposed to be done and we'll punch list the building so we can start moving in at the tech center, and third week in gym. I don't see that happening. There's just too many things out there to get done. In fact, they were pushing us to move out of the classrooms so they could finish the work that's going to happen under the bathrooms of the classroom and just get moving. So we started down that path, but the realization is they're not going to be ready. And I've got clear direction not to move out of there until we can move into the space we need to move in and not have a second move, whether they pay for it or not. So I'll be having more discussions with them tomorrow about that. But so we'll probably push when I say the 26th, we were going to have a crew come out here and dismantle the modulars and take them away. I think that's going to get pushed at least a week, if not 2. So they're doing better than the first time around, but it's still the same deal, you know, of not getting done as fast as we'd like. And we really can't contest too much because we added a bunch of work at the end, but that bunch of work at the end is not really the reason for them not being done. It just kind of buffers them a little bit. So.
When's the roof going to be finished?
I didn't look at I think, well, it was supposed to be finished by the third week of June. The short answer. I know there's some mechanical equipment that goes up on the roof that's getting delivered on Friday. There's a crane coming next week to lift it up and put it on the roof. And some of the equipment that goes up above the ceiling that we've been after them to get done is showing up tomorrow. So they're working towards their gym done by the third week of June. And I hold my opinion on that one. No, they're not going to even get that because right now what you see inside the tech room is it's all painted. All the ceiling tracks are up. The ceiling panels aren't dropped yet because there's stuff to do up in the ceilings. In the gym, the culinary is all sheetrocked. You can really feel the space now, but it still needs to be painted, and the stove and ovens and equipment needs to be put in still. So they're moving forward, but there's a good ways to go still.
Are we in any danger of not getting it done before school starts?
I don't think so. I mean, they're always going to be here for August for the transformer. I can't see it pushing in August. So, yeah, that's a silver lining. That's a real deadline, particularly if we haul off those 3 classrooms. So, the next step is to complete the roofing, the interior finishes, and they're not going to meet the punch list by tomorrow. Next week. There's a schedule you could compare. The next slide shows kind of things we added. The milestones for the punch list, and the big thing that we added was the re-roofing, which really, affects an isolated area, but it did drag out the schedule a bit.
Does Katroki send someone up at the punch list stage to make sure everything's done?
Yeah, they're scheduled to come out for the tech center on the 19th. I suspect that that's going to get pushed in tomorrow's meeting because I don't think they're going to be ready for the 19th. It was going to be the week of the 10th, as you saw in there, but it morphed into the week of the 17th, and specifically the 19th is where they're scheduled to come out and do the punch list. That's why we were doing the move on the 26th, because we want them to punch list before we get in there with a bunch of boxes and bang up walls, and then it's like, who banged up the wall? Well, if we do the punch list first, then it's a moot point, you know. And these are the change events that have occurred. The $35,000 table for the photo lab got reduced considerably. I think that'd make you happy. Can't remember what it was, but it's in that list somewhere. But it's probably a third of what it was. And I see that tapering off. The change request. It's just now how much can we save on the allowances by not spending as much as we made an allowance for on specific things. So I think that's where we are. If we got questions, I'm wide open.
Could we maybe have a phase 2 tour at the August board meeting, or I don't know when the appropriate time is?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be quite appropriate.
We'll be in session that week. It's the first day, actually.
If that's inconvenient.
No, it's totally doable. Yeah.
Or if you want an arrangement, me or Jason, if you don't have a quorum, if you want to come earlier, we could walk you
Can
through
we
it
do that
as well.
during closed session? Or
Yeah.
the tour? Before the 5 o'clock meeting?
For the 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the 4th?
Yeah. You know me, bottom line, it looks, from what I could tell, 1.1 million is what we'll have
Yeah,
left
that
at the end
hasn't
of the
changed.
project. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
We're on the same page.
Yeah,
Good.
we're on the same page.
Perfect.
Yeah. So,
We have you on film.
yeah.
And yeah, and just for context on phase 3, when we approved that first set of phase 3 projects, we had assumed we'd have at least 800,000. And we're at 1.1, so that's good.
Yeah. One other expense that we have that I think I've factored, yeah, I did factor in this, is the cost of removing those modulars. They give us an estimate at the beginning, and they held to the estimate. It just, we spent that, I had that budget for that. We spent that and more some because we rented them a year longer for phase 2. So I got it. You'll see a line item now that wasn't there before, the cost of the company to come back and take those 3 away.
Okay.
So,
Sounds
all
good.
righty.
All right, any other questions for Tom? Great.
All righty, thank you.
Another thought about that. We
Yeah.
can't do that in closed session, actually.
Oh.
It's not a closed session.
Okay.
So we either need to do an open or just do an informal thing. But if you all 5 are together, then it's kind of
The meeting.
a meeting. So we could do it in open session.
Okay, that's fine.
You could do it before the closed session, too.
Right, just call it a
Meet at 3:30 for
community,
communities of, whatever.
yeah. Well, yeah, school's in session, so they won't get out until 3:30, 3:35. So
3:35.
I'll think about that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, 10.3, the Citizens Oversight Committee Annual Report. This is confirming that we're using all of our bond proceeds for bond-eligible items and not salaries and things like that.
Emily?
Yep.
You skipped 10-2.
Oh, my bad. Thank you. 10.2, let's do that before we get to 10.3. Phase 3. I don't think we have anything in particular that we need action on today. We did hire a person who will be on salary to do bond construction projects, who will be focused on the community school restrooms, first and foremost, over the summer, and then we'll be working on the locker rooms, I believe, and probably other small things as well.
Do we have a master list of what we expect this person to be able to do?
We have a job description that was approved,
Right.
but the master list, yeah, it's essentially that list that we've been discussing, and we're looking at doing everything on that list, but in the order that he can get to most conveniently first, so.
Well, he may not be qualified for everything.
No, yeah, I mean,
it's everything
what
that-
we've talked about,
Right.
like, we're not gonna do the back entry of the comm school, so everything that we've already discussed is on that list.
I'm just trying to, his basic salary is paid out of bond funds, so there are limitations on what he can do. So I just hope that you have enough things that if he has to skip one,
Yeah.
he doesn't sit around idle.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
plenty
I
of
think
work.
between the
There's-
PAC and the wood shop
the window
building,
rot and the wood shop, there's a lot to do, yeah.
some of the facilities
I don't think they'll
improvements,
be able-
installing that water fountain, I mean,
I don't think he'll be able to complete
No.
everything that he's got the skill set to complete in a year, is my guess. Maybe more, but it's a little more than that.
Okay.
And we could have one of my part-time maintenance worker help him too.
Mhm.
I know we had talked at the last meeting about the tennis court. I think we might have a little bit of, it sounds like MCRPD may be
Yeah.
interested in working with us, partnering with us on
Yeah,
that.
so MCRPD reached out to me, and Jennifer Saunders was supposed to meet with me sometime soon about collaborating on an upgrade to the tennis courts. So,
Does that imply a professional resurfacing instead of the asphalt we were contemplating?
I have no further information other than they would like to collaborate on that, so, but they would fund it,
Right.
so.
And who's that?
Park and Rec.
The
Yeah.
Mendocino Coast
Oh,
Recreation and
okay.
Parks Department, they run a lot of the local youth recreational sports leagues and those sorts of things, and adult recreation stuff, CV Star.
I think you'd have to remove the concrete if you were to go to a traditional tennis court
Right.
finish.
Right.
Which I don't know what MCC or MC, whatever their acronym is. I don't know what their budget is, but I'm
Yeah.
guessing that's
big.
not in their budget.
Yeah,
But I think, but an asphalt finish is also a fairly traditional hard
Sure.
court surface in the US
Right.
for most parks and things. It's,
Just from the research I did, like the
Yeah.
tennis court thing, whatever it is, it's their special clay, something or other deal, which I think goes over just like very well compacted base. It's a big deal.
So other things we're working on is like two drinking fountains for the outdoor drinking fountains and water filling stations for the soccer field and the lacrosse field, so our students don't have to drink out of a hose anymore. And terracing at the soccer field for spectator seating, similar to what we have out there at the lacrosse field. So.
and then we got the report back from the fields. Can you circulate that to the,
Thought I
oh,
did.
you did, I'm sorry, you did. We got that report back, which, was no real surprises there, but does have some proposals for things you can do to renovate the fields and improve them. But we have a lot of water issues I think we need to tackle first.
I mean, I think the water is the biggest thing, because,
Yeah.
it's probably the reason why the fields are in the shape they're in, is because we haven't been using enough water to irrigate them. And when I saw that bottom line number in the, for the 4 fields of over 5 million gallons a year, that's just a lot of water.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But there are also some irrigation things we can fix to actually make the water work better on the fields
I
as
think
well, which,
They wanted all the sprinklers to be increased in size, and some of
Yeah.
them 360 degrees instead of 180 degrees and things like that.
Yeah. so,
But that wasn't priced out particularly, this is.
no.
recommendation.
But he did say he was going to be contacting some contractors to get some cost estimates for us. So
Okay.
I look forward to hearing about that as well. Yeah. All right. Anything else on phase 3?
Do we have you mentioned about not doing the structural work on the back side of the comm school. Are we
I
consulting with?
think you just meant that Ruben wouldn't do that.
No, right. So are we putting that out, feelers out for contractors to?
Not yet.
We'll wait until after July 1st when your maintenance.
Then you can bug him again. Well, I've got a whole email laid out, the July 1st, 12:01 a.m. It's going out to Jason. Just kidding. Okay, all right, good?
Yeah.
All right, 10.3, Citizens Oversight Committee Annual Report. And so this is the report regarding the use of the Measure H bond proceeds for the high school modernization project.
Yep, so we had one meeting with the committee in May, and we got a tour of the Phase 2 progress, and thanks to Meg and Don for helping with all of the materials, and they approved their annual report.
And then we have to approve their approval?
I believe.
Looks like it's an action
so.
item.
I believe so. Question.
It's listed as an action item, so.
Yeah.
Would anyone
Better
like
safe
to
than sorry.
move to approve the Citizens Oversight Committee Annual Report?
I so move.
Second?
Thank you. Any public comment on this before we vote?
I see no one.
Go ahead.
Student trustee Kinsland,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Schaefer,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes.
trustee Griffin.
Yes. Item 10.4, consideration of leave requests. We have a classified manager requesting a 16-week leave of absence, working 5 hours a week.
So this is for student teaching, so I am recommending approval for this.
What is our substitute for this during the 16 weeks?
We have a site supervisor who will be subbing at Greenwood, and then we've hired, so it is our current assistant teacher who has been working hard to get her site supervisor qualification, so she's going to sub. And then at the end of the 16 weeks, the understanding is that she's going to resign from that position. The teacher will go back in, and in the meantime, we've hired a replacement assistant out there. So it's all working out perfectly.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve that leave?
I so move.
Second?
Any public comment before we vote?
I see no one.
Okay, go ahead. Thanks.
Student trustee Kinsland,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Schaefer,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes.
trustee Griffin.
Yes. Item 10.5, ratification of the superintendent contract. This is a new 3-year contract with Jason that I negotiated with him and presented to the board, and the board is in favor of. It is item, what is that, 10.5 in the agenda?
I think we should just note that it includes 5 extra days to his contract for the additional burden of being maintenance supervisor. That would change if we hire a replacement for that position. But, you know, in terms of the savings to the district, it's the greatest single savings in our dramatic series of cuts for next year.
Yeah.
I give Jason kudos for taking that burden on himself.
Agreed.
I move we ratify the superintendent's contract.
Thank you.
Second?
Okay. Do we have any public comment before we vote?
I see none.
Okay.
Student trustee Kinsland,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Schaefer.
Yes.
Trustee Ohm,
Yes.
trustee Griffin.
Yes. 10.6, public disclosure of collective bargaining unit agreements. We need to publicly disclose the provisions of all collective bargaining agreements before entering into a written agreement. So these are the collective agreements between the district and CMIS, MTA, and unrepresented units. Jason, anything we need to know here?
I don't believe so. Just includes a 3% raise for all staff. And then Meg has to include any other bargained impact on the budget. So. Nope, I think that's about it.
Any questions or comments? And this is an action item as well, it looks like.
I'll move to approve the public disclosure.
Second.
10.6.1.
Thanks. Any public comment before we vote?
I see none.
Go ahead, thanks.
Student trustee Kinsland?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Ohm?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes. 10.7, adoption of the 24-25 local control and accountability plan. This was subject of the public hearing at our last meeting and presented by Jason. Anything?
The only change in there that is notable is that thanks to Kim and Tobin, they figured out the attendance rate, how to find that in our Aries reports. So your version does not include the updated, because I just was able to do it yesterday, but the version included in the for the county will have it. So in 21-22, our attendance rate was 91%, and in 22-23, it was 89%. So we will see what it is at the end of this year, and I will be able to include that in the report as well.
And that impacts only our, some of our categorical funding, right, which is ADA based?
Yeah, it's ADA
But
based.
almost all our funding
Yeah.
is not based on attendance.
But we do know our kindergarten attendance rate improved dramatically, correct?
Right, yeah, Kim gave a good report, I forwarded it onto the board. That was pretty eye-opening to see that they went from 80% to such a big improvement in 1 year. So. Right, right.
All right, would anyone like to move to approve the LCAP?
Also move.
Second?
Thank you. Any public comment?
I see none.
Let's put it to a vote.
Student trustee Kinsland?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Ohm?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes. 10.8, approval of the 2024 local performance indicators self-reflection. Sounds like you.
So, yeah, this is another difficult thing to do every year. Aaron, can I share my screen?
To be self-reflective?
No, to do this document
Oh,
for
okay.
the state. It's so not too much changed as far as our rating scales, but let's see, going through so this is our, the first one is the number of teachers we have misassigned, and they've changed the format a little bit where we have to go use the information straight from our SARC. So this was the data that was provided to us from the state that we provided them. So, is there any questions about this?
I'm not sure what ineffective means.
I knew you were going to ask.
Yep. You and I agree wholeheartedly on that one, Michael. I also don't know what that means.
So, according to the state, ineffective means, you can see it on your screen now, an assignment monitoring outcome indicates that one or more of the relative attributes of the assignment had no legal authorization from a permit, but I think more for us, or one or more of the relative attributes of the assignment were authorized by a PIP or a waiver. And so I don't know which ones they were, but that's the definition of ineffective. So it doesn't mean that they were ineffective, but that's the term. So I have no idea which staff is which. Do you? Yeah, so we had, it was 1.1, so I don't know why it was 0.1. So. Yeah, maybe. But it's for this year. It's for this year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it would be the short-term staffing permit. Yeah.
All right. Moving on is to our implementation of state academic standards. You know, I think we are at the full implementation of sustainability for all of our core subjects. This is just kind of an opinion-based thing. We do this every year. We typically just keep them the same, but I think that we have we are there in science as well, in addition to math and our ELA. Yeah, I don't really have too much to say about these ratings. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. But these standards have been around a while now, and we have textbooks that are aligned, and our teachers are provided the professional development, as well as the administrators. Parent involvement and family engagement, let's see. This is based on the survey that was given last year. And so I tried to match some of the questions to these, the rating scale. And, you know, we're showing some strengths in welcoming families when visiting our schools. We provide communication in a variety of formats, which is easy to understand. And then I think the fact that we have a full-time social worker is continuing to have benefits to our to all students, and the Family Resource Center is still thriving after all these years as well. And Parent Square has been, the move to Parent Square instead of the email listservs has been much more convenient for us. We can select student groups to send information to instead of irrelevant information to all parents. All right, so let's see, then school climate. Let's see, this was based on, oh yeah, this was based on the most recent survey that I gave for development of the LCAP for 24-25. So these numbers were a little low, and so, but we didn't capture all of the students. It was
What
a survey.
page are you on, Jason?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on page 12.
Okay.
We didn't capture all of the students. It was sent out to students in grades 5 through 12, and these numbers were a little low. That said that only 50% of the students said that staff at MUSD cared about them, while 42% were neutral. 59% said they felt safe at school, while 38% were neutral. That's much lower than the California Healthy Kids Survey, which asks it differently, and it asks it only in 3 grades, or 3 or 4 grades. But you know, I think those are somewhat concerning, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what we get for next year and tracking that and see if anything we're doing is different. Only 78 students responded to the survey, so. But like I say, they're lower than in the past, and they are cause for concern. And then access
Can
to.
you send
oh,
it?
sorry.
Can you send it out again and make it a requirement of finishing the school year? I'd love to get more students' input.
Yeah, or I can send it out sooner in the year next year. It'll actually be a part of the LCAP for one of our engagement goals is a different survey that we'll do. But measuring school safety, connectedness to school, to school connectedness and school safety is required, and so we'll get those numbers. We still provide a very broad course of study, and all of our courses are accessible to all of our students. The only barrier is our master schedule. It's such a small school. Sometimes we can only offer courses once during the semester of the year. So,
What is our options now for eighth graders who want to take algebra?
Well, we have our CPM course in eighth grade is essentially as rigorous as an algebra course, and that's what we've been using. And then in ninth grade, they go into algebra. So they don't have the option to take actual algebra, but it's a very algebra-heavy eighth grade course.
Do we allow students to test into geometry in ninth grade?
Do we allow students to test into geometry in ninth grade? They can do the challenge course.
Yeah, there are a couple of kids who have done that recently. Most will take geometry during their sophomore, or between freshman and sophomore year, so they can go straight to algebra to their sophomore year.
The official plan is one of acceleration, which we were advised by, as you recall, an expert that visited the district years ago.
Right.
They recommended accelerating later on in one's high school career. And so our official way to get in calculus is to go from geometry to pre-calculus, which covers algebra 2 concepts.
And we have quite a few students taking geometry over the summer.
That's right. And students have figured that out. We may not, we will support them and get them signed up, but that is not our,
Right.
Official.
Right. Right. Any other questions on the local indicators?
All right, we need a motion
action
to
item.
approve that one? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. You would like to move to approve the local performance indicators, self-reflection?
I so move.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll second.
Any public comment?
I see no one.
Okay.
Student trustee Kvinzland,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Schaefer,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes.
trustee Griffin.
Yes. 10.9, adoption of the 24-25 MCN budget. This is an action item, and Rob presented the budget
Yeah, so
last time.
Rob has, can you make Rob a panelist? He put together a little presentation that he would like to share as an update to that presentation. So I'll share my screen, and then Rob can take us through it. So Rob, are you there? Let me see if he's there.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
All right. Yep.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Good, thanks.
All right.
Thanks for being here.
For sure. So I just wanted to give kind of an overview of, where things are at, and kind of go over our finalization of our audited net position. And this first graph, I sort of wanted to show, the past few years of like where we've been in terms of our operating revenue and our total expenditures, and just kind of give a visual indication of, you can see kind of things are trending up. You see a little bit of a plateau there in June of 2019 when the pandemic hit. And as we continued to start investing into open air services, because Fusion is a product that is, while very popular right now, is somewhat on the decline. You can see that kind of in our total expenditures as we lose some of our Fusion customers. that expense goes down, and so does our operating revenue. Let's see, am I doing the slide here? Yes. So then this slide shows our net position of our assets and liabilities just over kind of the 3-year period. And you can kind of see at the bottom there where our total net position has been. We had some investment that was still continuing to happen, and we increased our total net position in the 22-23 year. So if we go to the next slide. As I was showed before, here's our audited ending net position change of kind of where we were and where we've gotten to. What I find interesting is that it takes almost a full year for this audit to completely come in, and there's some information that we don't get towards the very end, if you will. So basically, you can see our net position change has gone up that $33,000. And if we go to our next slide, this is kind of an overview of our net operating position, just kind of the last 3 years. You can see in 2021 and 21 and 22, we're still heavily investing in our open air stuff, and that, that cut into our operating expenses. And in the 22-23 year, we had cut a lot of expenses. And so we had staff that left, and we had positions that weren't rehired, that were high paid positions. And so that, brought us to the point where, we were actually able to make some profit. I'd like to also explain the non-operating revenue and expense line. That is the district contribution minus the, the charge for services for the phone services for the district. That's why they don't all say $40,000 across the board there. And I guess we go to the next slide. And here's just sort of our unaudited totals. There's some year-to-date stuff that you'll see where we're at, and our kind of bottom line for the year-to-date is really just a projection. There is some data that's missing, as you'll see, the like $77. That's just data that we just don't have yet. But you can kind of see, where things were at for the end of the 22 year and the end of the 23 year, where we were budgeted for this 23-24 year, and looks like we're on track, hopefully, to do a little bit better than that if we don't have any large expenses crop up at the last minute. As we know, those things do happen sometimes. And then our budget for next year, as you can see, we're hoping to have a slightly lower, profit. I'd like us to do better, but the initial thing about the budget is that's the projection right now. I've been finding that I'm keeping these a little conservative. So this is kind of my second one, and I'm hoping that I'm not being too conservative, but just right, if you will. And that's really kind of it. Were there any questions? Oh, I can't hear.
No, you can hear, just silence.
Oh.
Everyone's either thinking or doesn't have a question. I don't know which. I don't. It looks good. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
Certainly. My pleasure.
Anyone on the board have any questions? Do we have any public comment or questions on the budget?
I see none.
to approve the MCN budget.
Second?
Any other comment before we vote?
Student trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Schaefer,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes.
trustee Griffin.
Yes. Great, thank you, Rob, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, item 10.10, adoption of the 24-25 MUSD budget. So this is the actual school district budget. We did have the budget presented to us by Meg at the June 6th meeting. Is Meg on to do that tonight, or do we just need to approve it?
We just
at this
need to
point?
approve it unless
Okay.
she has any updates for us. But I don't think she does.
No, I don't.
I move we adopt the 24-25 MUSD budget.
Second.
Any public comment on the budget? We have a motion and a second.
I see none.
All right, let's vote.
Student trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Schaefer,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes.
trustee Griffin.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Meg. 10.11, consideration of resolution 2024-14 regarding formation of the MUSD Maintenance Assessment District. We had the public hearing about 18 hours ago, earlier in this meeting. So this is about the levy for fees within the Maintenance Assessment District.
I'll move to approve resolution 2024-14.
Second?
Any public comment before the board votes? Any comment from the board? Nope.
Student trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Schaefer,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes.
trustee Griffin.
Yes. Right. 10.12, consideration of resolution 2024-15. This is regarding the educational protection account, which was also a subject of a public hearing at the beginning of the meeting. So we're required to approve the expenditure of monies from the EPA and certify the expenditures are in compliance with the guidelines.
How much money goes to this account?
It's right around 100,000, right, Meg? Is it a little less?
It's 80,000 something. It says, let's see,
And it's all
80,000, I would say 80,400. It's based on ADA.
it's all spent on salaries.
And this is a recurring annual,
Yeah.
and it's earmarked, we have to spend it on salaries?
No, we don't have to,
Oh,
but that's what we do.
What's the history of it, you know?
Meg, do you know the history of it?
The
Yeah,
EPA, or how we've spent the money.
No,
The history.
the formation of it.
Yeah.
Where it came
It
from.
was a bond issue, a ballot issue that established the,
Just give us a little more money?
and it has a time limit. I'm trying to think, it was extended once, but I think its current expiration is in 4 years, Meg?
Yeah, it's in 2030, I think, 30, 31, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And it was like Michael says, it was part of a ballot measure that was part of the, during the last recession, it was a tax on the wealthy, if you will. And it created the education protection account. So all these tax revenues go into this account, and it gets divvied up between all the schools, basic aids included. We get $200 per ADA. And we are to use it on instructional salaries, not administrative salaries. So we use it for teacher salaries every year.
I thought you could spend it on other things, but it has to be on salaries?
Well, it has to be on instructional expenses.
Oh.
And so the cleanest way to do it is on salaries, on teacher salaries. So that's why we do it that way.
Thank you. I'll move to approve. Which one is it? 2024-15.
Second?
Oh, yeah, it should be. All right, any public comment before we vote?
I see none.
Okay, go for it.
Student trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Ohm?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes. All right. Item 10.13, this should read consideration of resolution 2024-16 in the matter of the delegation of authority to purchase supplies, equipment, and services. And the resolution itself is right, it's just the agenda. So I believe this just allows us to continue purchasing those items every year. This is a really exciting one.
I'll move to approve 2023-16.
Thank you.
Second.
2024,
Yes,
excuse me,
yes.
dash 16.
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Any public comment?
I see none.
Okay.
Student trustee Finsland?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Ohm?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes. All right. 10.14, consideration of resolution 2024-17 regarding the authorization for 24-25 interfund transfers.
This is basically just a tool for Meg, right?
Yeah.
I move we adopt resolution 2024-17.
Second?
Any public comment? All right, let's vote.
I see none. Student trustee Finsland?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Ohm?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes. And 10.15, consideration of resolution 2024-18 regarding the authorization for interfund temporary cash transfers at the close of the year. This provides the flexibility under specific parameters to transfer funds between accounts when necessary as the district closes its books for the year.
And so apparently we need this one and the one before it.
Don't look at me.
They're not the same.
Do you really want to know?
I don't know. I guess I don't.
That's a good observation, Winsper.
No, 17 is authorizing us to do transfers in the next school year, and 18 is actually letting us do transfers in this current school year to close
okay.
out the books before next school year.
Okay. Thank you.
I move we adopt resolution 2024-18.
I'll second.
Any public comment?
I see none.
Let's vote.
Student trustee Finsland?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Ohm?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes. All right, item 10.16. Looks like 10.16.1 is the use of school facilities board policy. And this is a first reading.
So, my computer died, so I don't know, I didn't see the backup. Do you have the exhibit on your packet?
Yes, there was the exhibit in the packet.
So not just the application, but the actual exhibit, because this shows how much we charge?
I
I'm
think
not
that's
sure.
right. Let
I'm
me just
not
double
sure.
check that it does that.
Did I put that in there?
I think it's, wait a minute.
We have the application.
I'm not sure, did it have the fee schedule in it?
It's E1330. I'm not sure I gave it.
Doesn't
It's
look like
just
it.
the
I think it's
AR.
only the form.
Okay. So, not that we need it, but that we might want to include that and bring this back as a first reading again in August, because we want to have a discussion and bring a proposal that makes it a lot easier. One of the things that we've talked about is possibly doing away with category B in the policy, and so it's either going to be, this is for our students and it directly impacts our students, or predominantly is for the benefit for our students, or and there will be no charge, or there will be a charge. And it takes away a lot of the guessing in category B. And so this is essentially what Fort Bragg does, and we have their pay schedule, and it's simple. It's just for-profit and nonprofit, and it would be a lot cleaner and a lot easier to just have a very simple. Is this a school-sponsored event? Is this for the school students? If not, these are all your classrooms. And so the exhibit that I meant to put in there, I didn't, but it has different fees for up to 4 hours, and then per day for the athletic fields, the classroom, the gymnasium, the kitchen, the multi-use rooms, the band room, performing arts center. They're all different prices. But it's, we, when I say we, Kim and Tobin and I, we've been discussing this, and we think it would be a lot easier and cleaner if we just had a very simple, it's for the students or not, and then you pay this amount.
Do we distinguish between events that charge admission and events that don't charge admission?
Well,
I think that's one of the things in the policy.
one of the
that
things in the
was
policy, yeah.
mentioned.
So, yeah, and then, but, well, one of the things that is frustrating in B is that, you know, does it charge a significant admission? Well, what's significant?
Right.
And then, what is it, you know, your opinion of what furthers the broad public interest might be different than mine. And so at the, if we just did category C, it wouldn't matter if they charged an admission or not. Because we still have to clean the room, we still have to, you know, we're still using
Right.
our resources.
I mean, the idea is to recover our costs, but not to make a profit, right?
Right, and I think that these costs, or these prices that I'd like to bring next time
Could you pass that down?
aren't unreasonable. I wonder if there's a way that you could, if you're into it, go to the website and pull up that exhibit so everyone can see it. Is that possible?
This doesn't have any of the outlying schools on it.
I think that's considered a classroom. Or it could be a multi-use space. So is it, yeah, there it is at the bottom there.
That's a huge difference. I mean, it's more than double.
So there are the prices, so, yeah. And so that per hour is just the tech side of things, so if we need to help them with the tech. Otherwise, it's a flat fee.
So you're saying that we'd go to a category C for most occurrences?
Yeah, so if it's not a school-sponsored event, or for the schools, like if the majority of our students are, I don't know, if it's a, help me think of a school, not a non-school sponsored event that is for most of our students, for the benefit of our students.
Baseball clinic.
So a baseball clinic that most of our, yeah, actually, yeah, so we
Club
bring in.
soccer.
Right, so we wouldn't charge them, but if it's anybody else, then really what we'd want to do is, those are the profit, and then for the nonprofits, we'd cut those in half up there. So it'd be $25 to use the field for up to 4 hours, and then $50 for the entire day. And we can mess with these.
So those would be the fees
Costs.
for for-profit entities,
Yeah.
and nonprofits would be half that.
Yeah. And we can manipulate some of the costs if we don't think they make sense. This has not been updated in quite some time. Yeah,
I
we don't
think
wanna
that
make
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we don't want to make a profit for sure, but there is cleanup to do, and it does tax our resources. Somebody needs to give them a key, what? Damage repair, yeah. Just recently, we had a pretty big hole put in the wall in the K-8 gym for indoor soccer. So that costs a lot of money and time.
We don't have them responsible for damages anyway? I mean, that should be,
We could.
don't we have an
Yeah.
insurance
Yeah,
requirement?
no, we could. We could charge them.
You know, if you had substantial damage after a use, we should go after them.
Yeah. I
But
agree.
you're saying we're not.
I don't think it was that substantial. Yes, I agree. I'm not going to charge them. No, it wasn't that big of a
I
deal.
have pointy elbows. What can I say, Michael? No, it wasn't me.
I mean, I guess
I used the wrong
I'm
word.
still confused. You know, you're gonna have two price structures, one for nonprofits and one for for-profits, regardless of the level of admission they may or may not charge.
Yeah.
You know, okay.
So how does this dovetail with the policy? the policy has all these different options. So
Well,
are we doing away with that? Am I looking at
well,
one?
category A is no fee. I'd like to get rid of category B.
That doesn't look like what we have in
Well, what
the
about
packet.
No, I know this is the old one.
Oh, okay.
That's the
It doesn't have A, B, and C, so it's
Yeah,
confusing.
the one that's yellow is that
Well,
one.
it's
has-
1, 2, and 3. So option one.
True.
Sorry,
It's option one, not category A.
That's what happens when the computer dies.
Sorry,
So
I'm
option 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C. Sorry.
That's all right.
So are we just gonna replace or just add? Okay, you're just gonna bring it back?
Well, the exhibit has always been a part of this package.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it's category C that's what it refers to. That's the charge. Categories B and C, if there's a charge. But I didn't give the exhibit, and I think it wouldn't hurt to have a couple months to come up with a structure that works. But we have some pretty big entities using our facilities, and we're finding that we're not treating them all the same.
Yeah.
Like the Mendocino Coast Writers Conference uses our facility, the film festival, and the music festival. And they're all being treated differently because we don't have a clear process. So that's what we're trying to do.
What about would the agreement with Circus Arts be involved with this too?
They pay actually a lot. I think they pay more when you calculate it all, and then they clean the facility as well.
I was amused that the map was made by our grounds consultants indicated that building was the
That's what it
Mendocino
was.
Center for Circus Arts.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's supposed to look community school.
So we were talking earlier about cleaning the beams. They clean the beams for us because they're already up there.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, and they need clean beams, I would think.
Maybe they should work in the gym a little
They
bit.
should. They should. So yeah, we have some great relationships that we want to keep up.
I think this
So
makes
I'd like
sense to bring it back.
as
Yeah,
a first reading. Again.
works for me. Do we need to vote to not move it forward, or do we just leave it?
I think he said he wanted us to bring it back as a first reading.
Right.
Or we could
But
just
it is a
take no
first
action.
reading, that's an action item, so do we just need to take no action, and then
Just
it'll
take
come
no
back?
action, it'll come back.
Okay, great.
Can I
10,
just ask one follow-up question? I mean, do you anticipate any group paying much more or much less than they're already paying, if it's standardized?
There could be some groups that pay a little more that we haven't captured,
Uh-huh.
that aren't paying anything, and they should.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the big groups would be paying probably less, especially if they're a nonprofit.
They can always make a donation if they want to.
Yeah, and the Writers Conference makes a donation every year of at least $500.
I think the one thing I would say is even for nonprofits, if they're using, especially like indoor facilities for a day or a weekend, we want to make sure the nonprofit rate is enough to cover our custodial, right? Just
Yeah,
at least the minimum necessary to cover
yeah,
our time and costs.
yeah.
Right, because a very small group might have almost no impact versus a bigger group, and if they're a nonprofit,
Yeah.
could have more impact.
All right. 10.17, these are all various policies for information only. 10.171 is uniform complaint procedures. Are these all things, are there changes to these?
These
or-
are just updates for the parent notifications that need to go out at the beginning of the year that are required, so these are legal updates.
So theoretically, should we adopt these before August because of the fact that we're going to be
I mean, in a perfect
following?
world, yes, but I think we're planning on sending them out, because really, ultimately, we're required to do these things anyway, and so,
So we'll bring our policy up accordance with our practice rather
Yeah.
than the other
Yeah.
way around.
Yeah. You know, we probably should have brought these forward in April. Yeah. But when did you get them? Do we get them, do we get, we don't get them that
I don't
early,
get
do
them
we?
that early.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's a tough one. I don't know.
That's fine, I just.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess we.
I guess a lot of
we can-
school boards meet 2 or 3 times a month, and they can.
I
do
guess
these
we can
things
fast
differently,
track it, you know? There's nothing that says we can't. Or we should have brought them Thursday. Thursday and then Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but at this point, with it on the agenda the way they are, we just need to vote to move them forward to a first reading. Any questions or comments on any of these? Can we vote for them all together?
It's information only. There's no action.
Oh, this is information only. Thank you. Thank you. I always forget on these policies how they work. All right. Any other questions or comments on this? All right. Well, this is our last meeting until August. Yeah.
I want to jump back to the solar for a moment.
To the what?
If
The
you
solar,
must.
That's all right. I was just
We
thinking.
did go by it really quickly.
I know. If we want to possibly direct Jason to start looking into permitting, local permitting for the tree work. Because I know we have a lot of different ideas, but I think all of us are inclined to use one or the other tree location possibly.
For at least a portion
Or
of
at
it.
least a portion of it, if we move forward. And that could be,
It would be nice to know,
it could be a
too.
long item.
Yeah.
And we theoretically could, we could get approved, we could get a permit and then not do it. I don't think we'd have any penalty for not cutting a tree down. So I think that might be prudent to.
Start looking into it,
Jason to
yeah.
start looking into that for us.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
And if it is on
Maybe I'll
the
just
permitting,
I'll just do all of them, right? I mean, because if we don't know that whether they're going to be the
Yeah, I would.
the what do we call this? The
Cypress.
GM track?
Yeah.
Or the,
Or the
Ground
GM
mount track and
cypress.
Ground mount cypress, I think.
yeah,
is what they
Yeah.
call it.
yeah, track. So maybe put in for
Both.
all, yeah.
you're talking about for tree cutting in particular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure.
Ultimately, though, they're going to want to see the final plan because that's what they wanted to see the first time around, right? That's why we had to give them the
Yeah.
carport and then the side of the hill.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, is it, I
So-
mean, do we even have an answer? We don't even have a clear answer yet as to whether we need to go back and get a new permit. It
Well,
was
yeah,
sort of, it depends on how much we change it.
I was told that if it involves tree cutting, most likely we would have to get a new one. And if we just change the location of the panels, it would just be likely an amendment.
Right now, our permit doesn't include any area that required trees being cut.
Right,
Because it showed what track slope and carport.
C1 and 2, yeah.
So if we move to either of the ground mount areas with removing cypress trees.
And didn't I hear correctly that they don't really have the authority to deny a solar project, right? The actual placement of solar panels, but they can mess with us with the trees.
I don't know. I mean, that would be an interesting confluence. They definitely do not have the authority. It was tried and proven through the MHRB
Yeah.
a while ago. And
Well, are we talking about a California, are we talking about CDP or are we talking about MHRB? I mean, those are two very different things, right?
right.
I'm not too worried about MHRB, but I am worried about the CDP.
The one we got was a CDP.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll look into it. I finally have a contact that's been returning my calls and emails, so I should strike while the iron's hot.
Right. And if we did need something more specific, we're not talking much details for that permit. It's just a map, basically.
Mhm.
Layout, more, I mean, it's probably something like, on his presentation, there was the one page that, instead of showing everything, it just showed the slope and the two carports, and that's probably what was on the original permit.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, we are adjourned until August 22nd. Have a great summer.
Jason?